Welcome to the HorseFrog podcast. I'm Kamran.
And I'm Billy.
Billy, what would you say we do here?
Well, we like to dig deep into a bunch of books and shows and movies that we love.
In excruciating detail, right?
In excruciating detail. And we like to talk about things that we like about them, what they make us think, and what we learn from them. And a lot of times we're going to go off topic, but we're going to bring it back in. Basically, it is just two guys hanging out talking about their favorite stuff. And it's not meant to be a replacement for anything. It's meant to be a companion to anything that we're talking about, any shows, any movies, any books that we're talking about. And we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Hopefully you'll enjoy the show with us.
One final note before we begin the episode. If you would like to support our show, we have a Patreon set up. You can find the link at horsefrogproductions.com. You can also email us with any feedback at contact@horsefrogproductions.com. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description. Today we are covering The Boys, the Amazon Prime show, Season 2, Episode 2. Prior to episodes of this show, we like to give a little warning. This show is intended for a mature audience and has extreme violence and some scenes of sexual misconduct. If these topics upset you, then we do not recommend you continue listening. We have received some feedback from one of our Patreon subscribers named Dane. He was writing in to give us a little feedback on the topic we covered where we were mentioning how music can change the mood of a scene.
Oh, right, yeah.
He really identified with that, and he said he went and watched some videos where there were some impactful scenes, and he thought that that was a really salient point.
Awesome. Thanks, Dane. We appreciate that, dude.
Yes, and we do appreciate your support.
Absolutely.
One additional point that he brought up when we're talking about Lady Hawk, he was surprised that we didn't mention Michelle Pfeiffer along with Rutger Hauer. And that is an oversight.
That is a massive oversight.
Yeah, the timeless the Michelle Pfeiffer who never ages.
Absolutely. Dude, she does not age, does she?
Yeah.
Man, she looked fabulous at Ant-Man and Wasp. She's still as pretty as an old woman as she was as a young woman. So, yeah, it's been so long since I've seen that movie. When you mention Rutger Hauer, for some reason, I just have an unnatural love for Rutger. And it's not like I've seen very many of his movies. It's just, he's just so magnificent. He was magnificent.
Yeah, he was.
But yes, Michelle Pfeiffer is absolutely a magnificent actress.
Yeah, I think her most recent movie that I thought was really good was Stardust. She was the bad witch in that, the main one.
I did not see that. Is she great in that?
Oh, you need to watch that movie.
Okay.
That's another Matthew Vaughn movie, and it is
awesome.
Really good.
Okay.
I cannot recommend it highly enough. It's kind of like a fairy tale story adventure where young man finds his way in the world, and it's got Robert De Niro in it, Michelle Pfeiffer.
I thought De Niro was in that. Okay, I will check that out for sure.
It has a lot of people in it.
Cool.
Definitely check it out.
And again, thanks, Dane.
Thank you, Dane.
We appreciate it.
And we actually appreciate all of our Patreon subscribers, not just Dane. We look forward to hearing from everybody.
Absolutely.
And we will read out any feedback we have.
Yeah. And don't forget, contact@horsefrogproductions.com.
Yes, that is correct.
Please feel free to contact us, guys. Thanks. On the correction side, in a previous episode, we had discussed like a Roman legion side, and I had asked about the demon-possessed man legion. You've noted that you believe it's episode 5. That was the Belief Expo, I think. The agreed number by most theologians on the man being possessed is that they believe he was possessed by about 2,000 demons. And it was two fellas, so it may be 1,000 per guy. At one time, the Roman legion size said it was up to 11,000 people, and in later years, it became 1,000. And I think I have always personally gone with the number 1,000. And when I think of a legion, I think of 1,000.
Okay. So you said there were two men, each was possessed with 1,000.
Yes.
And didn't you say there were two different accounts? One of them said it was one man, but one said it was two.
Yes, there's actually 3 accounts of the same incident. 2 indicate one man. The latter account indicates 2.
Okay.
Skeptics want to think that this is contrary, but police people and other people that are more investigative than myself see this as complementary. For people like myself who are laymen at apologetics, tend to say that, well, if there's 2 people, there's at least one person. So, it's like these accounts we look at ancient accounts are told to different people, especially in the Gospels in particular. So they were each written for a different audience. That's why there's maybe some things that are covered by one that aren't covered by the other, or that are covered in a different manner than the other.
All right. Episode 2 begins with Butcher sitting in a chair in front of the graffiti in the basement that the boys have been staying in. We really haven't gotten a good look at this graffiti prior to this. The shot's actually pretty cool.
Mhm.
We see the sunlight filtering in from above because they're in a basement. The camera's behind Butcher. The wall is in front of us. The text of the graffiti reads Clarkson Avenue Haitian Kings. There's a picture of a skull with a crown, and there are guns fanned out behind it. It's actually really nicely done.
Yes. Very well done.
Butcher is looking at a piece of paper. His brow is furrowed in concentration. The paper has a bunch of notes written on it. We see a flashback to the house Becca is in. This is where Homelander took him at the end of episode 8 in season 1.
Right.
The notes that are written on the paper are everything he remembers from his time laying in the yard of the house after Homelander left him there. We then see a flashback, and we see Butcher wake up in a parking lot for a Tony Cicero's family restaurant. And this is the same chain of restaurants that they took Translucent to. I believe it was an abandoned Tony Cicero's restaurant.
Yes, it is. I checked. It is, in fact, a Tony Cicero's.
Nice.
So I guess that Tony Cicero's has a thing for dirty kids that says "keep your hands clean." Is that what?
That may have just been that one. We'll see. Maybe that was a corporate poster.
Right. Oh.
It might have been a
That
corporate.
would
I
be
mean,
great.
they had spaghetti on their head, right? So it's an Italian restaurant.
And why does that remind me of the Fallout world for some reason? I don't. It's kind of got that weird kind of comic strangeness to it. You know, that image in my does.
Fallout, the video games.
Yes, the Fallout video games.
That restaurant in particular had a very abandoned, dirty look to it.
Yeah.
To me, that is very similar to what you would see in a Fallout game, right? Where it's just dirty.
That's just true.
Nobody's there. You think that's some of the reason why you might be picking up on that?
That's probably. Thank you, doctor. Yes, that's. I'm assuming that's exactly
well,
what.
I mean, that's what strikes me. But I mean, the humor does also kind of it rings true. You know, kind of goes in line
Yeah,
with that.
it does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Copy.
Butcher stands up and runs into the restaurant. He's greeted by the hostess. He says, "Where the am I?" She tells him he's at Tony Cicero's. He clarifies that he wants to know what city he's in. She tells him Fort Wayne. She looks a bit concerned and confused by his behavior. I guess this is Fort Wayne, Indiana. You agree?
Yeah, that's the only thing I could think of.
Okay.
I didn't look up to see how many other Fort Waynes there were.
I did a search, and there was one that came up immediately.
Okay.
Didn't see a bunch of them.
There you go.
It's the most popular one if there are multiples. It's not something like orange, like every state has an orange.
Right. Right.
Butcher says he asks her for some piece of paper and something to write with. She takes too long, so he grabs a kid's menu and a crayon and starts writing down everything he can remember from the house that Becca was in. It's things like the types of trees that are in the area. I think it was like the latitude of the sun.
Yeah, that's kind of what
And then it was the type of house that it was, things of that nature.
Kind of like your stream of conscious thinking as quick as you can, everything you can remember at that moment.
Yeah, he's racking his brain as he's doing it.
Yeah.
He's really concentrating on it. In the background, we hear a news channel. They're saying federal authorities have initiated a multi-state manhunt for William Butcher for allegedly murdering Vought Vice President Madeline Stilwell, as well as endangering her infant son, Theodore. Butcher does a slow turn and looks at the hostess. She saw the newscast and is looking at him, and her eyes are huge. He runs out of the restaurant.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's a great shot.
Mm-hmm. Back to the present, Butcher shakes his head and puts the paper back in his pocket. Frenchie, Kamiko, and MM are sitting at a table together. MM is looking at an article of Susan Rayner on his laptop. Kamiko is writing in her workbook and shows it to Frenchie. She wrote boy, girl repeatedly in the workbook. He doesn't understand. She underlines and circles boy, and she's pointing the pen at it, but he still can't understand what she's trying to tell him. She looks disappointed that she can't communicate with him. Butcher walks up and tells them he's leaving. Huey asks where he's going. Butcher tells him he's going to meet a contact. Huey asks who. Butcher says someone who can help us find this soup terrorist. Huey asks, who is the contact? What is their actual name? Butcher has his typical grin and says, You'll love it. Huey says, no, I won't. I won't love it. I never love it. I never love it. At least he recognizes it now, right? You've been saying this for a while.
Oh, Right. I won't love it. I'll never love it. But
Hmm.
oh my gosh. I have an aside here. Do you want me to go this deep into this aside? Because I found some really crazy stuff.
Do it.
Okay. So we found out I was digging deep into Mother's Milk because you and I both just have a huge thing about him. Now, the first note is disturbing in and of itself, but I dug deeper. So the initial note, everyone, is that basically Mother's Milk still has to be breastfed occasionally from his mama to still live, or he will shrivel up and die. Um, so, yeah, that's a really horrific image. Um, so I looked deeper, and in the comic, he's actually qualified as a soup, and he is actually one of the few people born with Compound V in his blood. He's some kind of ex heavyweight champion. I didn't see what sure of what, but
Hmm.
that whatever kind of heavyweight champion. I'm assuming boxer or some kind of martial
Right.
artist. I'm
Right.
assuming while he was doing this heavyweight bout, he became aware of his abilities. He has superhuman strength, superhuman agility, stamina, and durability, which is another name for invincibility.
Mm.
But yeah, so the mother's milk name is he periodically drinks his mother's milk to survive. Without it, he would die. But he's also an it's horrific. But he's an expert investigator, weapons expert, and a great basic hand-to-hand fighter. And had a mentally handicapped brother who could control his mass, who
Hmm.
died moments after learning how to use his powers. He's wearing some kind of I'm a picturing this kind of like juggernaut style thing,
Okay.
but he grew big and the suit did not, and apparently it crushed his skull.
You got to have that technology to back it up.
Yes, you do.
Hmm.
Yes, you do. But apparently it killed him. But he was apparently mentally handicapped, and it had something to do with the thought, I think. Haven't figured out a whole lot about it, but I found that incredibly interesting. So just some twisted stuff from Mr. Garth Ennis, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. When I saw that you had put this note in there about MM, I said, please no.
I know. I know. I felt the same. I know maybe he doesn't have to directly do it breastfeed style. Maybe she can, maybe it's like Homelander style. Maybe that's where that
He
Homelander,
creepily
maybe that's part of
tongues
Mother's
it out
Milk.
of a bottle.
Yes. Oh my, yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes.
You have to wonder, MM's late 30s, 40s, somewhere in there. How old's his
Yeah.
mom?
Yeah.
And she's not going to be around forever. She's obviously not going to be able to lactate forever.
Well, and I also know some other things that this was chock full of spoilers. I haven't discovered this on my own reading. This was like the wiki fan page kind of deal. So it lists everything.
Okay, let's hold it back there because we don't know what they're going to do in the show.
Other things. Let's pass on. Yeah.
They specifically called him Mother's Milk in the show, so you have to wonder if they're planning on going this direction at some point.
Yes, I'm hoping they will. Now I'm hoping we'll start covering, as we start. I'm hoping this season because I'm excited about covering season 3 with you because we've not seen it.
Mm-hmm.
And from the trailers, I keep seeing Butcher's eyes glow. So I'm curious about the Compound V and all this other stuff. I'm really excited about this season because we'll be seeing it fresh together and digging deep together. It's gonna be real fun.
Yeah, I saw one picture of Huey. Homelander was talking to him and he had a cast on his arm or something. So some weird signals coming through the marketing materials for this. I've tried not to, this was just kind of incidental stuff. I'm not trying to look anything up, but it does show up in my feed.
I know one small thing but we kind of learned this by the end of season 2, and I'm not going to jump the gun here, but I mean, it's not anything that you couldn't have pieced together, from that. That's, I'm like you, I've worked hard to kind of avoid contact with season 3.
Okay. Well, let's move on. We'll get there eventually. So we got 6 more episodes after this one, then we'll be on season 3.
Yes, we will.
Upon Huey's outburst of him never loving it, Butcher turns around and says, "Noted," then starts to walk out again. Huey turns to the rest and starts complaining about how Butcher hasn't given them a word of explanation. He left them for dead, and now it's like nothing happened. Butcher stops and turns around. He points at Huey and says, "You're right. I am sorry. Sorry that I trusted this lot was smart enough to save themselves like they've done 100 times before."
I do agree, but man, this guy is so, if you want help from people, you need to treat them better.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a golden rule guy. So he's always got something going on. And my father always says a poor excuse is better than none. I feel like he's just making some excuse here, but he could have called. He could have said, "Hey, dude, this is the sitch. I'm going to be, whatever." But, he makes no attempt to keep these guys in the loops. It's like they don't exist until he needs them.
Walk me through a poor excuse is better than none. I'm not sure I'm understanding that. Is it no excuse is better than a poor excuse? Am I mishearing this?
Some people feel this way.
Okay.
No, you're not.
Okay.
But you and I, and we know a mutual person that's this. I'm going to relate it about an experience at the beloved late Fry's Electronics.
Okay.
And a certain individual has asked a question that's a yes or no question. You ask this person, is this display cleaned up? Something to do with the cameras.
Mm.
And it's like, no, but.
Mm.
No, but. And you're like, I just want the answer yes or no and not the but. And I feel that in a way that. Do you remember this?
I don't actually.
Do you remember? Do you want me to say a name? I'm not going to say a last name. This is a really great story. I love this one.
No, don't call anybody out. No. Just keep going with it.
But the fact is that you want, and I finally, I took this person and said, okay, look, Kamran wants a yes or a no answer. He's not asking for the reason why it is or is not done, but that is it in fact done or not done, so I know what I'm walking in tomorrow. And the person finally understands that you're just wanting yes or no. And so one of these things so with the butcher thing, butcher's always got a reason behind everything to tell somebody. So when Huey actually kind of stands up here and is actually kind of wanting an explanation, Butcher offers no explanation.
Mm-hmm.
Butcher turns it around and makes up and just says something. I expected these guys to behave the way that they did, which that may be fine, but it's your job as a leader of these men to keep some kind of line of communication open and not making these guys thinking they're on their own. How do they even know if he's alive?
Right.
Has he been in any kind of contact? I mean, as far as we know, the last these guys saw was Butcher was going off to take care of the Madeline Stillwell situation.
Yeah, I mean, they honestly probably wouldn't know that he's alive if Frenchie hadn't called him back.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm getting at is that Butcher has that mentality in my mind. Instead of just saying, you're right, or even just a straight up F you kind of situation, it's something. He still goes to the trouble of making and saying something and trying to turn it around instead of, being any kind of accountable. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. And I just want to make sure I understand your father's quote, though, because it interests me. I just want to make sure I'm understanding it. So from his perspective, he likes the perspective that an excuse is better than no excuse at all. Is that?
No. He is like you and I.
Okay.
This is said. I'm sorry. This is said sarcastically.
Okay.
I should point out this is not meant like as any kind of. It's just like somebody coming up with something, and it's like, well, I guess poor excuse is better than nothing.
Okay, I got you. Okay.
Kind of like that. So it's not a compliment. And it's okay. No, it's said it's meant in a sarcastic tone.
Got it. Okay. I thought it was literally being read without sarcasm, so I was just super confused.
Sorry.
Okay.
No.
All right, cool.
I should have said that. I did not say that it was implied there. Sorry.
Okay, no worries.
And I also said it very straight face.
Okay. We are on the same page now. Good to go. Huey says, okay, well, where you been? Frenchie says, well, technically, I called him back. Huey tells Frenchie Butcher blew up Madeline Stillwell. Butcher, raising his voice a bit, says, I told you, she was already dead when I blew her up. That sounds so bad when he says it that way.
That makes it so much better, doesn't it?
Huey doesn't like the response. He's still pleading with the rest of the team. He asked them, we're just going to pretend like this is normal, like we're lemmings. For them, this is normal, I think. I don't know that they know another way of operating around Butcher.
I assume so. I'm like you. I assume the same thing.
Butcher does a slow walk up to Huey. He has a sneer on his face. When he is face to face with Huey, he asks, well, who else they gonna follow? Huey doesn't have a response. Butcher waits, then says, right. He turns and walks out.
That's nasty, dude. And Butcher's never been a really particularly likable and or a stand-up person, but I'm really, And this is only episode 2. I'm really starting to dislike him already a lot in this season.
Mhm.
And I know this is on purpose. I'm assuming a lot of it is because Huey is such a likable guy. And for Butcher to be such a complete jerk like this is what's characteristic of him. But Huey's getting to where he's had enough.
Yeah, Huey is really standing up to him a lot more. He's being very argumentative with him.
Yeah,
The problem is Huey doesn't have any solutions for the stuff that he's complaining about.
that is true.
He's in this situation where he can't lead the guys, and neither one of the other two are willing to step up and do it, seemingly.
Yeah, if the situation is obvious enough for me to see it, I'm sure MM and Frenchies see it, but they're not helping. It's like they want to. I don't know if they're telling Huey on the side, dude, like this is just pretty much how it is. I don't get that feeling at all.
Mm-hmm.
But they like Huey. But it's weird. It's a weird situation. I understand for all of them. They're fugitives.
Mm-hmm. Homelander is playing catch with his son, Ryan. They're in the front yard of the house. Becca is inside the house and anxiously watching the proceedings. Ryan throws the baseball weakly, and Homelander kind of laughs. He tells Ryan that his dad had a ball from the '56 World Series, signed by Don Larson himself. He pitched a no-hitter in Game 5. First of all, which dad would that be?
Yeah, right. That's an excellent question.
And then, for those people that don't know much about baseball, probably including Ryan, Don Larson
Yeah.
was a pitcher for the New York Yankees. I mean, I didn't know this myself. I don't really follow baseball, so I had to look it up just to see who that was.
I don't either. And as always, I appreciate your deep research as well. That's great because I don't know. Yeah, sports. Yeah, me and sports. Yeah. And that was that. You know how that was working at the job we worked at. Dude, that was on Sundays. Oh my goodness.
Right. The football
You're
games.
subjected to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And then if it was a really big game, oh my word. I think Super Bowl Sunday was particularly.
Yeah.
Homelander throws the ball back to Ryan and he fumbles it. Homelander says, "Oh, that's okay. You'll get the next one." Ryan, lacking confidence, says, "Yeah, I'll get the next one." He weakly throws the ball back to Homelander. Homelander, you can see him kind of losing his patience. He says, "Okay, Ryan, use your powers." Ryan doesn't understand. Homelander shakes his head, turns around, and launches the ball, probably out of orbit. I mean, that thing takes off.
Yeah, I'm assuming out of orbit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's what's funny. He doesn't even look like he even chucks it hard either. It's just like he just kind of sidearms it and it's out of there. And that poor kid, he idolizes Homelander, but Homelander is you can tell he has zero understanding. I mean, he just doesn't understand this child. What is this? Why is he not like me at all?
Mm-hmm.
Very telling, I think.
Well, they're raised in two completely different environments.
Absolutely.
And we'll find out more about the mom's motivations of how she wants to raise him later, Becca,
Sure.
So that plays into it, I think.
Oh, yeah, it does.
Because if you don't have both sides of the parental unit there, it definitely affects how the kids are raised.
Without a doubt.
And then Homelander coming in this late stage of the game, that's many years that are missed opportunities for that masculine influence. Not that you necessarily want Homelander as the influence, but some father figure.
Yeah, agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, an honest to goodness father figure.
Right. I mean, they could have made up a grandpa for him or something,
Something.
Yeah. The Vought marketing department could have come up with something.
What you need is, Edmund Gwynn. That's the guy that played Herman Munster, the dude that lived across the street in Pet Cemetery. You need that old guy. I'm sure you can hire that actor across the street to at least, be some kind of father influence on that kid, something.
Yep. Ryan, seeing Homelander launch this ball, says, I can't do that. Homelander tells him, yes, you can. You're my son. He kneels down and gets eye to eye with him. He asks Ryan, has anyone told you what you're capable of? Ryan shakes his head and says no. Homelander tells him, well, then it's about time you found out. Becca comes outside and calls Ryan in to work on his math. After Ryan leaves, Homelander tells Becca, when I was his age, I was breaking the sound barrier. He can't even throw a fastball. Becca defensively says, we thought it was best that he have as ordinary of a childhood as possible. Homelander asks, we? Who's we? Becca tells him, look, I just want my kid to be normal. Homelander shakes his head and says, well, then it's a good thing I'm here, because my son is the furthest thing on this planet to a normal little boy. Homelander's approaching her as he is saying this. She won't meet his gaze and asks how long he's staying. Homelander's confused, saying, Becca, we had a deal. A deal that is alive and well and running around as free as a damn bird. So, let's just try and be civil, shall we? She has her arms crossed. She looks very uncomfortable. Her body language is indicating this quite heavily. Homelander walks up the steps to the house, and as he passes her, he brushes his hand on one of her arms, and she recoils when he touches her.
You know, I feel so much sympathy and empathy for her, for Becca here. She, you know, here is her abuser, the person why she's trying to raise a normal little boy with love and care, and then this guy, you know, this monster who did this to her to begin with shows up, is now kind of, I guess, for lack of a better word, stalking and trying to, you know, trying to all of a sudden be a father to this little boy and all this. And it's terrible, dude. That's got to be awful.
Yep. The Deep is still at the Church of the Collective. The creepy lady, Carol, is reading through a workbook that the Deep has filled out for her. The question she is currently reading, I couldn't imagine myself living without, ? I can make out a number of the Deep's responses. Some of them are cut off. The first thing he writes is, my talent, in capital letters. The next thing, my amazing underwater. I can't make out the rest, but I assume companions or something along those lines.
Yeah, I would assume that.
My ability to have long conversations with my wonderful underwater colleagues. My body, my awesome strength, my money, my lung capacity.
Yeah.
She looks up at him, then looks back down at the book. He asks her if he got the answers right. She says, there's no correct or incorrect answer. She turns the book to a page where the Deep had to draw himself and asks him, what is missing there? And she shows him the picture. On a side note, he's actually a pretty decent artist. I couldn't draw myself that well. So he did a pretty good job.
He did. I have a hard enough time drawing stick figures, dude.
Mm-hmm. She points to where his gills should be and says, Deep, how do you expect to be welcomed back into the Seven if you can't be honest with yourself? He says, Carol, if I'm being honest, I don't know what the you want from me. Eagle has returned. He has procured 2 6-packs of Fresca. He asked them how it's going.
Do you notice when he's passing through you've got me noticing the things, all the little Easter eggs. Do you see his pinball machine and then there's the poster on the wall that's about something about, you know, working with America's supermarkets. You know, that's where the incident at the Kroger happened, where he ran out of arrows.
Oh,
so you know, I'm kind of curious about the tie-in to the supermarkets and Eagle, the archer.
That's a good catch, man. I did not see that stuff. Yeah, good job.
Really, I'm kind of impressed. I got you. Okay, there you go.
Yeah. Carol asks to have a word with him, and they leave the room. She tells Eagle, I don't mean to be negative, but his operating perspective is functionally non-existent. I don't think there's a path here. Eagle says, leave it to me. Next we see Eagle has made the Deep some tea with mushrooms. He is explaining to him that he is being inhibited by suppressive energy. He just needs to realign things. The Deep asks about the teas, saying, is it shrooms? Last time I did shrooms was at a Goo Goo Dolls concert with some poli-sci chick from Oberlin. I looked up Oberlin, and that is a liberal arts college in Ohio.
I've heard that name mentioned before.
Eagle says, I guess I call it more of a gateway. The Deep grabs the mug and chugs it. He coughs sharply and chuckles. He looks at Eagle for a second and says, wait, are you not going to drink any? Eagle tells him, no, Deep, this is your journey. We hear an ominous tone. It's like a drop. It's like, whoa. We go to the Vought Tower. They have the screens outside at the street level where they advertise the soups. The new ad campaign is girls get it done.
That is so in your face too with it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It is, the girls get it done.
Right. It features Starlight, Maeve, and Stormfront. We hear Starlight asking, who's revving up the girl power in the Seven? And we see her recording ads for all the local stations around the United States. She probably does like 20 of them. Something along those lines that we see.
Oh, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Those people must do 100 or 1,000 almost. You know, there's got to be one for almost every station in a certain network, I imagine.
The press junket.
Yeah, yes, junket. Nice. We don't get to say that enough.
She's introducing Stormfront in the ad. She's the newest member of the Seven, and she's taking America by storm. Ashley tells Starlight she's doing amazing and asks if she needs to take a break or if she wants to power through the rest. Starlight tells her, let's just power through. She wants to get over with.
Just get it done.
We see the three of them having a photo shoot. There are hundreds of people taking pictures of them. I'm surprised they don't have an epileptic seizure with all that flash going on.
Oh, my Lord.
Someone yells, Stormfront, show us what you got. She holds her hands apart vertically, and arcs of purple electricity kind of arc between them. It looks really cool. We hear oohs and ahs from the crowd.
That does.
Ashley looks very happy. We transition inside the Vought Tower, and Ashley is leading the other three women and telling them, okay, ladies, we have a big day. Domestic outlets until noon, 10 minutes each, foreign until 2, round tables until 4, print one-on-ones until 6. Stormfront says, if she vibrates any faster, that stick-up is going to explode. Starlight laughs. Maeve gets a call and answers it. She gets a concerned look on her face and asks, what? When? She listens for a moment, then thanks the person on the phone. In the background, we hear Ashley saying, we're going positive, we're going female, thoughtful but upbeat. She sees Maeve walking away and says, where? What? Maeve simply says, I gotta go. Ashley says, what? No. Maeve doesn't give her a chance to even talk, saying, I'm sorry, family emergency. Starlight actually asks if everything's okay. Ashley says, Maeve, we've never had 3 women in the 7 before. This is a moment. Girls, get it done. You are not. And then we can see the elevator doors closing and Maeve is flipping Ashley off. She's just got a straight face. It's great.
Oh, I love it. I love that look. I love that she's giving her the finger. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. But can you imagine treating your manager that way and getting away with it?
Oh, goodness, no. But, that's what makes great escapist television. Seeing someone do it to a manager is like, yes, it's what you've always wanted to do.
Someone like Ashley, definitely. Yeah.
Right.
I'm definitely on Maeve's side in relation to needing to deal with the family situation. She probably could have handled it a little bit differently.
Yeah, she wasn't kind or not. She could have been nice about it. Mm-hmm. But I'm assuming that Maeve kind of thinks of Ashley. Remember, Ashley was just kind of, I guess an up and comer, but she wasn't really much of anybody yet. She was kind of a handler for a handler in a way.
Right.
So she's moved to an executive level. And I'm assuming that's also inheriting Stillwell's 90+ hour work weeks, probably more because this girl is single. And I'm assuming her whole life is going to end up revolving around Vought and Homelander.
Yes. Stormfront raises her hand and tells Ashley she has a family emergency too. Starlight's trying not to smile. Ashley looks pissed.
Oh, yeah, she does.
We are taken to Susan Rayner's funeral. Her children are there in the front row. Several rows back, we see Mallory is in attendance. Something catches Mallory's attention. Amongst the bouquets decorating the room, she sees an edible arrangement. I see grapes, strawberries, cantaloupe, honeydew. Of particular note, there are doves. We'll get more clarity on what they're made of in a moment. I couldn't really tell just by looking at them.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's it actually looks quite delicious.
It does.
I've actually purchased an edible arrangement for somebody once before, and it went over quite well, actually.
Was that for a funeral?
It was actually probably for a funeral.
Really?
And it actually went over quite well.
Wow.
Yes. I was kind of surprised.
You go up to pay your respects, and then you pick your fruit of choice.
Well, I don't know how we weren't there because it was about 1,000 miles away. Somebody had passed in Colorado and we were in Texas, and it was like we just sent this to her folks as a sorry about because it was like her aunt, so it was her mom's sister or something like that. And her mother, she talked about that arrangement for years, dude.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it was a big hit.
Okay, where do you order those from? Do florists have those, or is that from like a restaurant or a grocery store?
It's actually a florist. I think you could just call your florist. And I believe, of course, nowadays it's just all online, I believe. You remember FTD, those guys? Probably through them, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Floral Teledelivery, I think it's what the FTD stood for or something like that.
Mallory rolls her eyes when she sees the edible arrangement. After the funeral, Mallory's walking through the parking garage and she's about to get in her vehicle. She opens the driver's side door. As she moves to get into the driver's seat, she stops and says, "You think you can surprise me? I literally taught you this one." We see Butcher sit up in the back seat and he greets her. She tells him he promised her she'd never see him again. He says, I promise not to come to your house again. A subtle but important distinction.
Yes.
She says she assumes he sent the edible arrangement. He confirms, saying it was the deluxe bereavement bouquet with white chocolate dipped pineapple doves. Rainer would have loved that. Yeah, I couldn't tell what those doves were made out of. At first, I thought they were pineapple, but then when I was looking at them, they looked softish, like their lines weren't that sharp.
Right.
And so the white chocolate makes
Yes.
sense now.
Yes, it does.
Mallory gets a mad look on her face and slams the door to the vehicle. She starts walking back inside the building. Butcher asks where she's going. Mallory tells him, there are about 24 federal officers in the church next door. I'm going to turn you in for the murder of Madeline Stillwell. Butcher is incredulous, saying, oh, come off it, Grace. You really think I done that? She asks if he really wants her to answer that, then starts going back to the church. Butcher tells Mallory he knows who killed Rainer. This stops her. She turns around and asks who. Butcher clarifies, okay, well, I don't specifically, technically have the answer to that, but I know how to get it. We think Vought killed her for getting too close to something. Mallory wants to know what that is. Butcher tells her something to do with a soup terrorist smuggled into Jersey a couple of nights ago, and that is where we start. Mallory laughs and says, honestly, it's like asking a cockroach not to be a cockroach. It's just in your nature. That's a really great way of describing him. Yeah, he's always skittering about.
It is. But what does that say about her? Because she taught him to be that way. Was she that way before? Until the grandkids incident?
When she came to recruit him, she seemed very professional, almost like she does now, without the taint of bitterness and sorrow, you know.
She did, but she said the same line the first line he said to Huey, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So his whole spiel came from her. Now he may have just, of course, just toned it to his own needs, of course, but yeah. So I was just kind of curious if she was that way. But yeah, you're all correct. She did seem very professional, but so did Butcher at first.
Butcher,
Butcher initially seems way more professional. Okay, he seems more professional at first than he does now. Now he's just some guy on a straight up revenge kick. Now,
I mean, even Huey was saying
he's got to find, and he's got a mission.
You look like you're in a porn version of the Matrix, right? I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, Feds.
That's true. Okay, so he couldn't have looked that good. Okay, I'll retract that statement, folks.
When you think Fed, what do you think? What is a male or female federal officer?
Men in black.
Exactly. They're wearing a suit.
Men in black.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Unless it's the Doom Patrol, then it could be the Men in Mauve or the Men in Green, which are a lot more deadly than the Men in Black.
I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now, but I'm curious to hear more about that. So we will get there one day.
All right.
Butcher tells her, I know what she meant to you, all right? We find this terrorist, and we're one step closer to finding out who offed her. Mallory says, I'm not getting back in, and if I were, which I'm not, it sure as wouldn't be for you. Butcher says, oh, I ain't asking you all the way back in. Just dip in a little toe. Yeah, maybe two. Not for me, for Rainer. That's a nice tactic, trying to appeal to her sense of justice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mallory doesn't like this. She says, you never gave a shit about Susan. You're only here because you're desperate and you want something. She storms off and Butcher chases after her, asking her to stop. He tells her, look, I'll level with you, okay? Just hear me out. We don't see the rest of the conversation. The Deep is on a journey. Prepare yourself. He's sitting on a bed, listening to music. We hear the Goo Goo Dolls song Iris playing in the background. The Deep is playing with the webs between his fingers of his gloves. He hears a muffled voice say, hey. He looks around, seeing nothing. He hears it again and turns off the music and calls out to Eagle. He hears, more insistent this time, hey. He gasps, realizing where it's coming from.
Now, did you immediately recognize the voice?
No, I don't know who it is.
Oh, it's Patton Oswalt.
Oh, okay.
And so I immediately hear this guy's voice. And I'm like, oh, but yeah, that's so funny. This is so uncomfortable and so funny at the same time. It's amazing. He's absolutely hysterical in this too.
The Deep hears, in here, open up. He looks down and slowly unzips his tunic, then pulls the front open. His gills speak, saying, "Bro, we gotta talk." He pulls the front of his tunic together and is desperately holding it shut. The gills say, "No, you got to look at us." He tells them no. They yell at him, "Look at us." He braces himself, then pulls the front open. The gills ask, "Remember Melissa Dabrowski, the kindergarten teacher you finger banged backstage at the VH1 Educator Awards?" All right. You don't hear that word very often.
No.
And this prompted me to remember a South Park reference. Do you remember when Cartman dreamt that he formed a boy band named Finger Bang?
Absolutely. I'm way too comfortable and know too much about South Park, but yes, finger bang is a top 20 of the things you can do with your finger is a top 25 episode. And I'm thankful you brought it up because I've been chastised by someone whom I love dearly about my too much referencing of South Park. So thank you. And
I don't plan on referencing it that often, but I will say
I love it.
I have that song memorized. It's very catchy. For those of you that have never heard it, just look it up on YouTube. It's really short. It's Cartman dreaming.
Oh, it's amazing.
He's in a boy band. It's wonderful.
It's wonderful. And the argument they have over who can be the tough one is always classic. It's just so classic. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. They're trying to sort out which archetype they're going to play in the boy band.
Yeah. Who's the sweet one? Who's the tough one?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
All right. We're going to move on, but check out the episode if you haven't seen it.
Fantastic episode.
It's one of the older ones too.
Yeah. Like I said, the episode name is Things You Can Do With Your Finger. Yeah, it would probably be like in the first, I would think in the first 5 to 6 seasons, probably first 5 seasons, I think. Pretty sure.
Yeah.
That's our orange smoothie one, remember?
Yes.
The orange smoothies.
Yeah. The Deep says, "So what?" The gills tell him, "You were supposed to present her with Teacher of the Year, but you bailed while she was pulling her panties back on." The Deep tries to defend himself, saying, "Yeah, because she laughed at me." The gills tell him, "Bull. She just put her hands on your chest. You didn't even unzip your suit." The Deep says, "She would have laughed." The gills say, "Because that's what you do. You imagine women will laugh at us, so you humiliate them first." The Deep claims that's not true. The gills say, "You can't accept your own body, so you violate theirs." As the gills are speaking, we can see fluid popping out almost like spittle. It's gross, man.
It's so disgusting. It's so funny, but so disgusting.
The Deep tells the gills to shut the up. He repeats it several times. He jumps up from the bed and is freaking out. He runs to the door and starts banging on it, asking Carol and Eagle to let him out. They have locked him in and they don't let him out. The gills tell him, "You can't swim from us forever." The Deep yells at them, "You shut up, you ugly piece of I have nothing else to say to you." The gills say, "We won't let you shut us up anymore, Kevin." The Deep starts whimpering, then starts banging on the door, begging Eagle to let him out. Eagle is outside the door. He says, "Write it, brother."
I love Eagle. He's pretty cool, dude.
Yeah, he's
even though he's a cult member, he's really pretty cool.
Yeah, he's pretty chill. I really liked when the Deep did not remember his name, and the Eagle was about to start raising an issue. And he's like, "Nope, we're not going to do it.
Nope, we're not going to do it."
Just got it under control.
I love him.
Yeah, that was great.
Awesome.
Maeve is incognito. As she's walking, she sees a massive billboard of herself that reads "Saving America." We see that Elena is in the hospital.
Real quick, before we get, as she's walking, she is so incognito. And since we've never seen her incognito, I'm like, who is that?
She looks very different.
It took me, she looks so different. It took me about 10 seconds to actually realize that was her.
Yeah, without the hair kind of falling around her face, because she's got a baseball hat on, and then I think her hair's up in a bun. And she has sunglasses on. She does look pretty different. Yeah.
Completely different. Yeah.
Oh yeah. She's also got like this big frumpy sweater on, and she's normally wearing that like
she does.
Really tight armor, right?
Her feminist, you mean her feminist friendly armor?
Well, Maeve's, I mean,
hers is functional. She's got, those nice boots that are probably armor of a sort.
Well, I was more specifically referring to like the torso armor. right?
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not as revealing, I guess, as it could
Yeah.
be.
Hmm.
It's not as revealing as Starlight's. That's a fact.
Oh, geez. The feminist armor from Starlight's ridiculous. Yeah.
Hers is like a string bikini, isn't it? Starlight's.
Not that bad, but it's close. Yeah.
It's pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. We see that Elena is in the hospital. She wakes up and sees Maeve is there. She asks what she's doing there. Maeve tells her, apparently your work has Maggie Shaw as your emergency contact. Elena apologizes to her. Maeve tells her it's okay. Where else would I score this sweet jelly? She takes out a little figure of a boy praying and sets it on Elena's nightstand. What does that mean, sweet jelly? I don't get it.
I thought that was a Hummel. Isn't that what you thought, or so? Isn't that what your thought of a Hummel is?
Well, I don't even know what that is, but the sweet jelly, I don't know what that means. I just know that there's just a little figurine of somebody praying, right? Isn't that what that looks like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just some kind of little, cute, real cutesy
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing.
Right. Elena tells Maeve she thought she ate bad unagi, but it turns out her appendix is about to burst. Unagi's freshwater eel.
But thank you.
Maeve quips, well, there are easier ways to get my attention. Elena says, I kept thinking you'd call. Maeve says, yeah, me too. You want me to call your mom? Elena laughs and says, definitely not. Maeve asks, someone else? Like a girlfriend or... Elena thanks her for coming and says, I'm sure you have more important places to be. Maeve says Elena could die from something like this. Elena says she didn't, so Maeve doesn't need to save her. Maeve still wants to see the doctor and sits down in a chair. Elena assures her she's fine. Maeve jokes, watching botch doesn't make you a medical expert.
Oh man, my late wife used to watch that show. That's a horror show.
Is that where they mess up plastic surgery?
Yeah, I think and I think all surgeries, I guess, in general.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I'd want to
leaving instruments in soon. Yeah, it's and I love horror stuff, but real life horror stuff, nothing. No, thank
man.
you.
This is like real people got impacted by this.
Yeah.
I don't want to see people suffering like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Elena laughs. Maeve says she'll wait a while and just see how it goes. Starlight and Stormfront are being interviewed. Ashley asked the set people to take the middle chair out and to smush the two on the sides together. As soon as she said this, I said, why does it have to be the middle chair? Why don't you just take one off the side? I don't understand it.
I understand it not either. I was watching this with my girl and we're like, and I think I said the exact same thing, like, why'd they take the middle one out? They could have just taken it off the end, but that made entirely too much sense, apparently.
You have to wonder if the writers did that on purpose.
Oh yeah, everything's done on purpose. I mean, is it optics? I don't know. I got no idea. I'm too dense, but it's for calling our attention. There's got to be some reason to it.
Yeah, the fact that both of us thought the same thing. It's hilarious.
It's really weird.
Mm. The interview begins. The interviewer welcomes Stormfront to the Seven. He asks, are you as excited to be here as I am? And her response is great. She goes, I don't know. I don't think so. Starlight likes it. She's kind of laughing. We see a montage of 5 or 6 interviewers asking about how girls get it done. One interviewer asks Starlight if she's single. She says she is. Then we see her answer the same question many more times. At one point, Stormfront's just kind of looking at her. An interviewer asks, tell us how fun it is to have all this girl power. Stormfront breaks out in laughter. Another interviewer asks them to repeat an answer, but adds strong is the new pretty at the end.
Is it really? I hear this so much.
Strong is the new pretty?
Yeah, that's a new thing, apparently.
Really?
Have you not heard that? Yeah, I'm usually so woefully behind, but I work in retail, so maybe it's just kind of a newer thing that I've picked up on. But yeah, it's a thing now. So yeah,
strong how?
I don't know. It's real vague, isn't it?
Well, is it?
Strong mentally, strong intellectually,
physically?
Strong physically.
Yeah. What are we talking about?
I got no idea. But this is. I'm not kidding you. It's a thing. It's really a thing.
Okay.
It's also the same mindset in my mind also as that I used to have, we sell these pillows at my place I work at that says, stay home, mask on and save a life. So these people think, it's like, Okay, it's like this. So this it's kind of like I think it came out about the same time of all this. I got no idea.
Wait,
Slogans probably come out all the time.
they're selling pillows that you buy and put in your own house that
Throw
say
pillows, yes.
"Stay home and save a life."
Yeah, like stay home, mask on, save a life. Yes. So
Interesting.
yeah, because I think people really think that. Okay, I don't know how far I want to say,
Yeah, we're not going to go down this rabbit hole.
but yeah.
I'm curious who would buy that pillow as a decorative item.
Well, it's like it really has become this. Like they were selling this, as an image that people are forced to stay home. It's like, oh, let's make it look appealing. So let's
Mm,
sell things to people who are staying home because they can't do anything but stay home and drink apparently, and buy pillows with stupid catchphrases on them. At least buy a South Park pillow or something funny, other than this crappy slogan.
I would like to know, number one, the person that came up with that pillow. I'd like to see what kind of person
Right.
that is. Number two, I'd like to learn about the people that would actually pay for that pillow.
Yeah. Because another one is keep calm, mask on.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of pulled back a little bit since all the mandates have been restricted for the most part. So that messaging is going away. It's I think a little bit more.
Yeah, taking the validity of whether the masks are valid or not aside, taking that out of the conversation, just
Right.
as a marketable item, it interests me to think of
Right. Thank you.
what type of sales people actually get selling this stuff. If people actually buy it, who thinks it's a good idea? Just really curious about that.
Yeah, advertising is a fascinating branch,
Mhm.
to some extent.
So when this interviewer asks Starlight and Stormfront to repeat their last answer, but add strong is the new pretty at the end, they both get a kind of a sour look on their face. They don't like it. Yeah. They are asked repeatedly, do girls make better heroes? Stormfront says, look, no offense. I get you have your talking points, but why does it matter whether heroes have a or a I mean, shouldn't we all just, be competent at our jobs? I don't think girls do anything better. I think chicks and are in it together. Ashley's eyes get really big when she hears this.
I mean, a big standing O for that woman on that speech right there, right?
Yeah, I know I said I didn't like her when we were first introduced to her because she's just so toxic with the live streaming and the way she's coming across, but she's winning me over with the way she's acting.
Let's just put it like this: we know more about her because we've seen this season, but for the moment, let's just say,
yeah, look, we're going as we see. Yeah,
it's nice to hear someone say what we're thinking, and obviously, Starlight is quite delighted by that.
mm-hmm. Right. Ashley is staring daggers at her, and Starlight's trying not to smile. Stormfront's phone goes off. She reaches for her bag and starts to pull out her phone. Ashley starts mouthing words at her. Stormfront says, sorry, Ashy, Vought won't let me have pockets in this thing. You can see every crease in my You can practically see up Starlight's uterus. You want to talk about girl power? Let's talk about getting some pockets. Starlight can't hold it in anymore. She starts laughing. This lack of pockets thing on women's clothing is a complaint I've been hearing for a long time.
You know why they don't have pockets, or at least the way that I understand it, don't you?
No.
Because they really would like a pocket, but pockets on jeans, especially form-fitting jeans, show everything. So if you have a deep pocket like we have, it's not designed to flatter our butt. Women's jeans are designed to flatter their butts. So you go to stick in something.
Well, but they have back pockets, right? They always put their cell phone in their back pocket.
But they're not deep. This is why they're almost always more appearance than functional. They do have a minor functionality to it, but they have almost no give to them. Because it'll break up the lines. It's just
okay.
But from what I understand, I mean, it's and so it's just women don't buy them. They want them, but the front pockets is the same way. But front pockets are a little bit better on women's jeans than a back pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I do work at a store that sells a lot of clothes, and I do notice that this is from what I this is, I believe, a valid fashion argument. I think, I guess
it makes sense what you're saying. I could see why that would be the case. This whole concept of not wanting to carry around a bunch of stuff kind of made me think, my generation, I'm not sure, because you're a little bit older than me. I think you're like a decade older than me, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, I think so. I was born in 69. Yeah.
So my generation, we're starting to kind of go minimalist with like the things we carry around. We'll have like these really thin wallets that have maybe a couple credit cards in them, maybe a cash clip if we even carry cash, right? So we're going kind of downsizing. You have like a minimal set of keys. You might have a pocket knife, whatever. So
you watched Seinfeld, didn't you?
There are hundreds of episodes. I've seen a couple of them.
But did you ever see the wallet one with George, his big wallet?
No.
In the back, I have the Costanza wallet. My brother gives me a hard time about having the Costanza wallet, and it's not that bad, but I don't really carry it with me all the time. I mean, I don't sit on it, but it's a big wallet. And I wouldn't mind going minimal.
So it's like I was about to just describe, where it's like a bifold and it's like 3 inches thick and it's full of every receipt.
It's a trifold, yes. It doesn't. I don't have my receipts, but it does have my cards and it has some other things in it. But I've shrunk it down somewhat. Now there is some emotional attachment to it. I was given this. It was a gift from my late wife, so I tend to still carry the thing.
Okay,
but but I'm real bad about this one. I don't want to change wallets. I'd kind of because I don't tend to carry it. I have an office, so I can leave it in my. I can leave it at a place and walk off.
Mm-hmm.
I have a locked office, so it's nice. And so I don't tend to carry anything like it with me. But when I do, it's a big boy.
Right. So I had one other additional point on this before we get back on track, and that was, cargo pants and cargo shorts are particularly useful for carrying around stuff. People just generally kind of frown upon it sometimes. So
I wear cargo shorts.
I do too, but I mean, from a fashion perspective, I don't think they're the highest of standards, if you will. So,
True. Right. It's kind of lazy. I agree.
An interviewer asked Starlight, "Your teammate A-Train has been out of the public eye. Vought recently revealed that he was on a top secret mission in Kandahar. Are you worried about him?" Starlight clears her throat and says, "Yeah, of course. I pray for him every night. America really is lucky to have such a brave hero fighting for them." The interviewer says, "What if I told you he's right behind you?" With a boom, A-Train appears. He's yelling, "Hey, here comes the A-Train." He does a pose and says, "What's up?" Starlight is surprised and says, "Wow," uncomfortably. She's chuckling. She stands up. She hugs A-Train and says, "Wow, welcome back." He thanks her, then turns to Stormfront and says, "It is such an honor to meet you. I'm a huge fan." We're still looking at Starlight as A-Train is speaking with Stormfront. The music takes an ominous tone, and it kind of does that sound drowning out with the ringing tone.
Yes.
Stormfront tells A-Train that the feelings are mutual. We're taken to an A-Train party in the Vought penthouse. There are A-Train themed macaroons. The hostess are dressed in A-Train themed attire. A-Train is playing a guitar. I say playing, he's kind of plucking it a little bit.
Right.
Starlight walks up to him and asks, "How are you feeling?" He tells her, "Fantastic." She says, "That's great. We were really worried about you." When he doesn't respond, she asks if he plays the guitar. He says, "Nope. This is Prince's guitar from Purple Rain. When I woke up, I was just like, I want that." This must have been some object he's wanted for a while and held off acquiring for some reason.
Right.
What other explanation could there possibly be that he wakes up out of a coma and says, "I have to have Prince's guitar from Purple Rain"?
It's a really good question. FYI, it is just a replica of Prince's actual guitar from Purple Rain. But it's had to be something that you've wanted. And I guess just almost dying may do that to a guy. I don't know. But do you see, he seems kind of manic, doesn't he?
This whole episode, he's acting crazy.
Yeah.
Really crazy.
Almost like he's using, but I don't think he is. I think that stuff would kill him at this point, that Compound V.
He's acting like a psychotic boyfriend.
Yeah.
Or like a stalker. Yeah. Almost.
There you go. That's very close. That's it. Good job. You nailed it. I think that's what it is.
Starlight uncomfortably laughs and nods. He continues, "Like what I went through really gives you some perspective, He hands off the guitar to someone and stands and faces Starlight. She says, "Totally." He goes on, "They told me you came by my room every day to pray for me. Thank you." She tells him, "You're so welcome. Yeah, I think that prayer really does help. Anyway, You should know that everyone thinks it was a really good idea that you called me in for backup that night. I mean, what would have happened if I hadn't been there to give you CPR?
Mm,
Now we see why she's here. She's trying to
yeah.
tie up the loose strings.
Well, she's in such a compromising position at this point. You can't blame her for trying to see what he's going to say. Yeah, she's very uncomfortable. It's quite enjoyable to see her squirm a little bit. And I like her. There's no reason for me to enjoy seeing her squirm. She's just playing the part real good.
A-Train chuckles and says, "That's good to know." They look at each other for a while. Then he asks her, "How does everyone feel about you helping your traitor boyfriend escape?" Or maybe you didn't mention that part.
There it is.
He's had enough of the BS. He's getting right to it.
Yeah, ouch. That's the BS. That's what I was looking for, was that ouch.
Okay. Starlight stammers for a moment, then asks, "Who did you mention that part to?" He doesn't respond and walks past her, bumping into her with his shoulder as he passes her. She is left with the anxiety of not knowing how much trouble she could be in. In the Haitian King's basement, Huey is listening to "You're Only Human" by Billy Joel on his cell phone. We see a faded poster for Crimson on the wall. It reads, "She's the Countess you can count on," using something I can't make out, "of freedom to fight the commie machine."
Now, just a little fun fact here. She, too, is another member of, we mentioned Team Payback last episode because you mentioned SWATO.
Mm-hmm.
So she is apparently a member of Team Payback, as is Eagle the Archer, apparently, in the comic. And Gunpowder, which we talked about, Gunpowder, Mr. Second Amendment guy. But they've been around since World War II. They've had a rotating members, of course, because of the age of them. But yeah, been around since apparently World War II in that universe.
This is really interesting.
It is.
Because it seems like they're setting up with Eagle the Archer being in that separatist group, the Fresca group, if you will.
Yeah. Well, there's several groups. There's like a Team Kicks, a Team like American Kids or something like that, and then Team Payback, and then of course the 7 is like the big one. So I'm curious about the other ones. I kind of understand it's kind of like the Teen Titans or something like that. It's I guess that's where they probably pull some members. Well, I think A-Train is mentioned to have been in one of those groups.
Teenage Kicks,
Teenage Kicks. There you go.
And Translucent and Pop Claw
And Mesmer. Wasn't he? He said he was in Teenage Kicks as well at that time. That's where he knew him from.
Maybe.
That's how
I think he mentioned that. Did MM mention that at that Comic-Con that he was at?
No, Mesmer mentioned it to Homelander when he was giving him the phone with the pictures from his doorbell camera.
Oh, man, season 3 is going to be great,
dude. It's going to be it's going to be fun.
Yeah. Butcher has returned from his meeting with Mallory. Kamiko is sitting on a couch looking at the origami figure she found at the dock. MM and Frenchie are present. Butcher informs them that he had a meeting with the Colonel. Frenchie and MM look at each other, then Frenchie asks, "Colonel Mallory, you saw her?" Butcher walks up to Frenchie and puts his hand behind his head and says, "That's right, Frenchie. She's going to help us. We get her the soup terrorist, and she's going to get the CIA to scrub our records clean, get the old bill off our get you back to your girls." He says this last part looking at MM. I didn't hear anything about them getting their records cleaned by Mallory. Do you think he's making that up again?
Well, he could be, but the camera did cut before he had a chance to tell her the cunning plan, whatever the plan was. So he could, you can never tell. I don't want to trust. I don't believe him personally, just because because I just so don't like him this season.
Right. So far, he hasn't really had many redeemable qualities.
No, he's a nasty fella.
I had to look up Old Bill because I did not understand that reference. It is British slang for the police force.
Yeah. See, I love all that stuff because my parents loved watching PBS and all the BBC stuff. I grew up watching some of that stuff, but I like the comedy more than the drama that they liked. But yeah, I like the crime drama and stuff, and I've heard that before. But it's from more like the 70s. If you get a chance, you need to watch the original version of Get Carter.
With Michael Caine. Yeah.
Yes. That term "Old Bill" would possibly be used in that movie. I don't know that it is for a fact, but if you want to see a great old English crime drama, that's a great one. And I'm a huge lover of Michael Caine to begin with.
You didn't like the Sylvester Stallone one with Mickey
No, I
Rourke in it?
enjoyed it. I enjoyed it because I like Stallone. And what's funny
Mhm.
is an interesting fact is the woman that is, I guess, his brother's lover or wife or whatever is Miranda Richardson. She played the Queen of England on Blackadder with Rowan Atkinson. And she's a very famous English actress, and she's playing an American in that role.
Mm,
And so I like it because of her. But I enjoyed it. And Michael Caine also cameos in that as well.
he does, right.
So I have both of them.
Yeah. I just remember how big Stallone's neck was in that movie. It was ridiculous, man.
It
Like
was.
he really bulked up for that role.
I
That was
think,
probably the biggest I ever saw him.
and it's probably one of his last roles as being a, like I say that maybe the Expendables, he was probably just as big, but he seemed a little bit, it
He
was
was
before
leaner.
he was old. Yeah. But he was a little bit older before he started getting older. It's like his last, meathead kind of role, big guy role.
Mhm. Yeah, Mickey Rourke was in that, and he was also pretty roided out.
Yeah.
Those
I
two,
love Rourke.
they really,
I love Mickey Rourke. And I
yeah.
used to not like him as younger, but as the older I've gotten, and especially because of him playing Marv and my affinity for Marv in Sin City, I am absolutely enamored with him again.
I really liked him in Iron Man 2.
Dude,
I
he was
liked
great.
him
Yes.
in The Wrestler.
I haven't seen that one.
Oh man, well that's one of those Darren Aronofsky movies, so you're going to be
Oh,
punished
is
watching
it?
that movie. Yeah,
Okay.
with all of his
Okay.
movies, you are going
Yes.
into it getting flogged as an audience member.
I love Aronofsky, but man, it's so hard to, man, I have a hard time mustering up the will to be beat like that, dude.
Yeah, they're hard movies.
And they're so good. They're so good. But I'm just like, dude, it's like, man, why am I'm questioning my existence usually after his films. It's like, good
Like
gracious.
The Fountain,
The
that one.
Fountain,
Oh
that one,
my god.
dude, I like The Fountain, but it's punishing. It's punishing.
Yeah.
The one that the movie that I'd say I haven't seen enough of his, but the one of his that I love the most, of course, is Pi. Did you ever watch that one?
I had that on my watch list for a long time. I never watched it.
It's just a guy. It's basically a study of a guy who is, I guess, a mathematical genius would be the best way of looking at it. But he becomes obsessed with pi, and you watch this degradation of a man's sanity over pi, the mathematical figure pi.
Hmm.
Intriguing. That was like his first big movie, and it showed you what kind of guy he was. I never could sum up the strength to watch like Requiem for a Dream.
You've never seen that?
No, I understand that's really
It's hard.
tough. Dude,
Yeah.
I understand it's real tough. So yeah, and I need to watch it because I'm becoming a bigger Jared Leto fan as we go. He's becoming quite a fascinating character to me, and I understand he has a very important role in that movie. It's supposed to be very touching.
Yeah, he's one of the main characters.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice. I'll check that out.
So the mention of Jared Leto, I was really looking forward to seeing his rendition of the Joker
Right?
in Suicide Squad, and it was just not enough.
I bought the Suicide Squad. A friend of mine at the time told me just don't buy it. It's not worth watching. A person who will watch kind of almost any superhero movie was like, dude, just don't. And I bought it and was really, I didn't hate it. I kind of enjoyed it. It was still had Affleck as Batman, which for some reason I kind of like. But yeah, just not enough. And well, it's so hard to follow after the Heath Ledger thing, after the Dark Knight, dude. That's the epitome.
Virtually impossible. Yeah.
I think it's time. It's move on. It's time to move on to another Batman villain. He wrote the book on it. I mean, dude, it's done. You got to move on.
Yeah.
Because Ledger was dude, magnificent in Dark Knight. My dad liked Dark Knight. That's one of those kind of movies that it appealed to everybody. And he has been, Heath Ledger was magnificent in that movie.
Yeah. It's really captivating to watch him.
Very.
Yeah. That Suicide Squad, I didn't mind it so much, but the villain, again, it just had a trash villain.
It did. It's not the remake was way superior.
It was.
I'm a huge fan of James Gunn, and I'm a huge fan of Peacemaker. That is really we're gonna have to do Suicide Squad and Peacemaker. I think.
Okay.
It's just funny, and like I said, the fact that John Cena's character is so unlikable is why the show is so funny to me.
All right. The mention of Old Bill made me think, I wonder if this is where Billy Club comes from.
I think that's a good question.
I could not correlate the two.
Okay.
I saw a couple different potential sources of the term billy club, but multiples indicated that it was slang for a crowbar that burglars would use in the 1840s.
Wow.
So
Okay.
nothing to do with the police carrying it around that were called Old Bill.
Right. I like that. I like that idea. I could see that correlation very easily.
Yeah. Huey has entered the room and he asks, how do we know you're telling the truth? Because a butcher has just said that they have a deal with Mallory. She's going to clean up their records.
Right.
Huey has been pushing hard on Butcher this episode. Really, he's almost like a petulant, rebellious teenager.
You know, he is. He is very much, but you got to understand. I mean, think about it. It's like Butcher's left him for I don't know how many. I forget how much time has passed. I think it tells us at the beginning it's been a few months. I believe. I may be wrong, but again, I can't remember. The more we see him, he's more detestable. He's more of a bully, and part of it is just Huey's just kind of had enough, and he's I think Huey is seeing himself. It's like I've been here. You at least, it's like even with the fact that even if Becca is still alive, he had told him previously because remember at the end of season 1, he tells when he goes to rescue Frenchie and MM, it's like, what's going to happen? Despite anything, I still have nothing. I don't have Robin. You don't have Becca. Well, now he's got Becca, at least an idea of Becca to go for now. And still Huey, he doesn't even have the idea of Robin. He's just got the boys.
Mm-hmm. Butcher turns to Huey and says, 734 Central Avenue, Newark. Huey wants to know what that means. Butcher tells him, that's the address she gave me. It's linked to the blind bank account that smuggled that soup stateside, and I'll bet you he's there. Huey just has a sour look on his face. Butcher says, oh my lord, ain't you twats lucky that I showed up, eh? Back to the deep on his journey. He's laying back on the bed, covering his ears with his hands. He doesn't hear anything, so he takes his hands off his ears. He still doesn't hear anything, so he breathes a sigh of relief. The gills start talking again, saying, Melissa Dabrowski was just more than just another finger bang, The deep puts his hands over his ears again, repeating, no, 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 no. He slams his hands down on the mattress in frustration and says, it's not happening. It's not real. The gills continue. The way she looked at you. She was sweet, smart. Girl like that, you could have been happy. The deep looks down at his gills. They go on. You deserve to be loved. The deep looks like he's about to start crying. He says, don't with me. The gills repeat, you deserve to be loved, Kevin, but that starts with you. The deep more aggressively says, don't with me. The gills tell him to take a look, a real look. Go on. The deep walks over to a desk and picks up a handheld mirror. He looks at his gills in it. He runs a hand over the gills. It makes a disgusting squelching noise as he does it. He apologizes to the gills, saying, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm the ugly one. The gills tell him no. The deep says, yes, on the inside. The gills say, you just don't see what I see. The deep drops the mirror, sits down, and puts his hand in his hands. The gills start singing You Are So Beautiful by Joe Cocker to the deep. The deep says no and continues crying. He says, I'm not. The gills keep singing, and the deep starts singing along with the gills. What a breakthrough, man. This body dysmorphia that he's got is a pretty serious issue.
It is.
Yeah. How many men do you think, knowing like how ugly those gills are, how many men do you think would want to look like him, even with the gills?
Probably a lot more than you could imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting that someone that looks like that would be just so hateful to themselves.
Because it's not that, like I said, it's not as bad as you think. I understand why you'd want to wear a shirt like he would wear to keep stuff from getting in there, to getting into your inner body cavity. That's the only problem with having a gill, is I guess as you get things in there. So it's like, so the suit, that's great, but I wouldn't think most people would really care. It's probably a lot, but he's making it a bigger deal than it. I'm assuming someone laughed at him probably at one point early on as a kid, and it just messed him up bad.
Probably, yeah. Some kids being bullies when he was a kid.
Yeah.
Stormfront is live streaming again. She's in the middle of a lecture telling her audience, so in short, do not waste your hard earned cash on the big hunk of plastic that'll probably end up in a manatee's belly when your kid chucks it in the garbage. She's really talking my language, Billy. I don't want to like her, but
Well, what I
she's saying all the right things.
she is, but I think what's kind of funny for a person who I'm air quoting here, who appears to be unconcerned about image and wanting to fight the system. She sure wants a lot of people on her social media to see it, and we know she's got at least 1 million plus followers.
Mm-hmm. Starlight walks up and whispers, "Hey, I just gotta say, I really like everything that you've been saying about Vought." Stormfront doesn't even look at her and dismissively says, "Yeah, okay, cool." Starlight says, "No, I mean, I agree with you." And I just noticed as she's sitting here, Stormfront has some big heels on her boots.
Okay.
This sticks out to me because she's already so short compared to the other women when she's standing next to them, even with the boots on. I looked up her height, and this actress, Aya Cash, is only 5'1".
5'1". Good gracious. I'm 6'4", so that's tiny. I'm a foot taller than that woman. Dude.
Yeah. Huey and Butcher are 6'1", so they're literally a foot taller than her.
Wow. Yeah.
Yes. Homelander, I think, is 5'11".
I have a friend actually that I know here that is 4'7".
Wow.
So right. So I mean you can just imagine how much I tower over that person.
Yeah, I think that there was one girl in high school. She was 4'9". I remember
Goodness,
her
yeah.
just being very
Close
short.
enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Stormfront asks Starlight, "You wearing a wire or something?" Starlight's confused, saying, "What? What does that have to?" Stormfront interrupts her with, "Look, I mean this in the nicest possible way, but I don't need some Vought spy Barbie sniffing around to see whether I'm a team player." Starlight, a little defensively, says, "What? That is not at all what I am." Stormfront stands up and says, "I used to be a fan, but look at you. You're like the Vaughtiest Vought in all Vought."
I love that.
Gecko timidly walks up behind them, and Stormfront does a double take. Gecko is wearing an eye patch. Stormfront says, "I think a Cyclops dude's trying to get your attention." She turns and walks away. Starlight turns around, saying, she addresses Gecko, asking what happened to his eye. He tells her, "Oh, Vought is testing a new volumizing dry shampoo for eye irritation. As if you give a." He reaches in his pocket, taking something out, and hands it to Starlight, saying, "Here, I brought you a sample." Gecko must be quite the asset to have around in a drug company.
Oh.
Imagine a willing human subject that can regrow human tissue so easily.
Yeah, but he grew that arm back so fast. What did they do to him that made it take so long to come back? Did they take it out, I'm assuming, and then are messing with it to see what irritates it, or do they irritate it in his eye, or do they have something in his eye as we speak?
That's a good question. I probably should have made a note of it, but yeah, you're right. The arm almost instantaneously grew back, but the eye is taking a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Maybe it's still in there. Yeah, like you suspect, it's in there, and they're actually actively irritating it.
Yeah, that'd be the only thing that I could think of, because unless we like we talked about the caloric thing previously,
Mhm.
maybe he gets tired and maybe things don't grow back as quickly when he tires out, maybe, which would be bad news.
That could be a possibility as well. But I mean, I would think it takes a lot less to grow an eyeball than an entire arm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
That's
so
it's not bone. It's just a gelatinous mass for the most part with the nerve. It's all soft tissue versus growing a bone, veins, and everything else. I mean, it does have to grow those other things, but not the bone and everything else. That would be a lot more.
yeah, I was thinking just the volume of tissue on the arm.
Yes,
Significantly more.
A lot larger. Yeah.
Starlight opens up a little feminine hygiene case that says Gal Gear by Vought on it.
Gal Gear.
And sees there are 2 tampons and a bottle of Compound V in the case. She says, "Are you kidding me? I can't take this right now. I can't get away from this press junket. I literally have no pockets." Second time this episode, no pockets are mentioned. Start the equality campaign, Billy.
I will try, but I have a question. Do feminists hate pockets?
Is it feminist or is it just, I don't know.
Maybe fashion forward people hate pockets, so they want to look good, but they don't want to have a place to put their things and then gripe about it.
maybe that'll be the next season's hot thing, is a shirt with many pockets all over it, pockets
Yeah,
everywhere.
right.
Yeah, and maybe this is the reason Rob Liefeld drew so many pouches on his characters in the 90s. Had to put the stuff somewhere.
You know, as much as grief as we give Leafield, and I will agree with you, you got to have somewhere out. You know, the only person who seems to be unafraid and unashamedly wearing any pouches is the bad man. He's not unhappy to wear pouches, is he?
No, I mean, you got to keep your smoke powder and gadgetry somewhere.
I agree wholeheartedly. But for some reason in the 90s, it wasn't just Liefeld he may have been the one that started it, but I noticed some other comics where the artist seems to interpret fanny packs with gritty. I don't know why. I know you said you still have not seen Deadpool 2.
I know. I've seen it now. I've seen it now.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. That's a fanny pack. So yes, so the fanny packs, but I think that I don't get it, but you got to have someplace to put things. I would carry a fanny pack if that was the case. I did carry a fanny pack when I used to have a CCL because I carried a Colt 45 in that thing. So I dare you to make fun of my fanny pack then, boy.
Was it a members only one?
No, I don't know what kind of brand it was, but
okay.
it was a fanny pack. But like I said, it carried a large gun in it.
Okay. Starlight tries to hand back the case. Gecko tells her, "You wanted the V, here it is. If you threaten me again, I'm going to make sure that everyone knows that you're the one who took it." He walks away. Starlight's left standing there, unsure of what to do. She thinks for a moment, then tries to stuff the Galgear case in her boot. We hear the sound of A-Train showing up. He says, "You're tight with Gecko?" Starlight is surprised by his arrival. She says, "Hey, yeah, from Capes for Christ, back in the day. Yeah." She starts walking away. He is acting, as we discussed earlier, very strange. Just the way he almost like he's stalking her, right? Yes, A-Train turns and says, "Yeah, what'd you just put in your boot?" She says, "What? Nothing." She's standing right next to Stormfront's purse as she's talking to A-Train. He says, "Because it looked like you just put something in your boot." She walks up to him saying, "Why don't you tell me what's in my boot?" He reaches down and inspects her boots, finding nothing. He stands up and exhales slowly. She says, "Maybe you shouldn't be hitting the crystal with your buddies quite so soon." Stormfront walks back up. Addressing Starlight, she says, "Come on, let's finish tickling these halfwits so we can finally do our real job." She picks up her purse and begins to walk away.
I love her attitude.
Yeah.
I do love her attitude.
It's very edgelord.
What is it?
Edgelord. She's just like, well, I don't know. Like, I guess kind of James Gunn humor is what I'm picking up.
Right. Oh, yeah.
You know, that type of person. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. She turns and sees
You mean Star-Lord?
No, Edgelord. People refer to this type of humor as like an edgelord.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're so edgy.
Oh, okay. Copy that. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thanks for the knowledge there.
Sure. Stormfront turns and sees Starlight isn't following her, and she prompts her with, "Shall we?" She begins walking away, and we see the Galgear case sticking out of a side pocket on the backpack. So Starlight reacted pretty quickly there.
Very quickly.
Becca is pulling up to another perfect house in a perfect neighborhood. She's dropping Ryan off for a piano lesson. Becca tells Ryan she'll be back in an hour. She's going to have coffee with Ms. Bird. As soon as Ryan enters the house, Becca takes off, driving as quickly as she can. Back at Becca's house, Homelander is being creepy. He's raiding the fridge and drinking milk directly from the bottle.
What is with that obsession on the milk? I mean, it's almost as creepily, if that's a word, creepily, as the frozen breast milk in Stillwell's office. Not quite that bad.
Yeah,
but almost,
he's really relishing it. He's not doing the tongue thing. Which,
yeah, thank you. I appreciate him not doing that.
Yeah, but he is definitely enjoying himself more than one should while chugging milk out of a jug.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He goes up to her bedroom. He's smelling her pajamas. Under the clothes, he finds a hidden compartment with a picture of her and a young butcher. Becca drives up to a guard outpost at a large wall. It appears she's on the inside of the wall. The guard shack is keeping her from getting out. She gets out of her vehicle and starts banging on the door, yelling at the guard to let her in. She hears the guard through an intercom, asking her to get back inside the car. She tells the guard she wants to talk to Dr. Park. He repeats himself, telling her to get back inside the car. She looks at the security cameras and yells, "Damn it, Dr. Park, now." The guard's phone rings. He picks it up and hands it to Becca. She is greeted by a man on the phone. She asks, "What the is going on?" He says, "I understand this is upsetting." She says, "I was told I would never have to see him ever again, that he would never know about Ryan or me. That was the deal." The man says, "Homelander is quite upset that this information was concealed from him. Corporate has made a decision not to antagonize him further." Corporate.
Right? Home office.
She hysterically says, "You need to make him leave, because if you don't, I'm going to take Ryan and I'm going to run, and you'll never find us ever again." The man tells her, "I think we both know that that's not possible." Becca looks up at the security monitors and sees Homelander snooping about in her living room on one of the screens. She's crying now. She says, "You have to protect us. You have to move us, please." The man says, "I'm sorry." Now that he knows, there's just no putting the toothpaste back in the tube. I've never heard it said that way before.
I've heard that once, but I kind of like it. It's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. "You should probably be getting back. Piano lessons are almost done. Just keep him calm. Our best guess, he'll get bored and move on." She's shaking her head and says, "You don't know that. You don't." She hangs up the phone. We see the Homelander has walked up to the camera in the living room of her house, and he's looking right into it. This whole conversation it reminds me of Darth Vader. "I'm altering the deal. Pray I do not alter it any further."
That's Cloud City and Empire and Orlando, correct?
Yes.
Dude, how does Lando must have an 18 charisma? Because even though he betrays Han, he still comes out on the right side. Man, what a rascal. I mean, I love that dude.
Yeah, Lando Calrissian's a good guy.
He is.
I think he was probably just trying to survive, you know?
Yeah, I think he's trying to keep his city. I think he did have a city to look out for. I don't fault him too bad on that.
Yeah. And Han was not the best of people either. I mean, we love him.
He is a rascal as well, but this kind of place. Also, the funny thing, do you have flashbacks of the Truman Show when you see that fence that she pulls up to?
I was thinking the Maze Runner, because I never saw the Truman Show, but the Maze Runner was kind of a similar principle where the kids are in this kind of central garden-y area, and there's these massive walls surrounding them, and the doors open periodically to the maze that they can go in there if they want.
Oh, do you know what the Truman Show's about, though?
Is that Jim Carrey? And he's like, his whole life he spent in a bubble.
Yeah, he doesn't know it, though. Yeah. He's unaware of it.
I am not the hugest of Jim Carrey fans.
Okay, listen, I agree. I am not a fan of it. There's a lot of comedians who I like personally and who can be good in a serious movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do not like Jim Carrey. I like two movies. One of them is The Truman Show, and the other one is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
I knew you were going to say that, because that was what I was going to say, is that was the movie I liked him in.
Those are like bookend movies. That's why you need to see The Truman Show. That's kind of an unofficial, strange bookend type of movie. They're both kind of strange movies that Jim Carrey is quite delightful in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a Jim Carrey being gross, or because I don't like I said, I just mostly because he's usually just so crude and just stupid. I like my humor I like it smart, dude. I like it pretty dry, and Truman's pretty dry. It's a dry, funny show.
Mm-hmm.
I think you'd be really tickled by it, and it's family friendly.
Yeah. Elena is looking at the figure Maeve gave her pensively. She asks Maeve if she gets to keep it. They're both laying in the hospital bed next to each other. Maeve tells her maybe. She asks, "What will you trade me for it?" Elena tells her she will let Maeve take her out to dinner. Maeve finishes her pudding cup and sets it aside. She doesn't respond to Elena's offer. Elena says, "Right. I forgot. We'll need to order in. Keep it low pro. Maeve, what are you doing here if nothing has changed?" Maeve laughs and says, "Oh, the last thing that woman needs is another nose job." She's referring to the person on the TV, ignoring Elena's question. From Elena's perspective, it's got to be frustrating trying to have a conversation with someone and they won't even engage even though they keep coming around, like this
Yes.
exact scenario.
Oh, that's got to be awful.
I understand that Maeve has her reasons, right? But
Yes,
I can definitely empathize with Elena.
I do, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I think parts of me feels that Elena is pleased to see her around a little bit more. She acts kind of tough about it, but I think she's a little bit happy here. But to your points, yeah, it would be quite frustrating to try to have a conversation with someone that keeps trying to deflect your questions.
Mm-hmm. Elena shakes her head, saying, "Okay, we've done this dance. Thanks." Maeve looks at her and says, "Elena." Elena tells her it's time to go. Maeve gets up off the bed and looks like she's struggling to come up with what she wants to say. After thinking for a while, she finally says, "Homelander and I went to this Oscar party for 12 Years a Slave. There was this producer. He swapped place cards so he could sit next to me, and he chatted me up all night. 2 days later, there's a fire in his office. They found his head in one room and his torso in another."
Mm.
Elena is confused. She asks, "What are you saying?" Maeve tells Elena, "I don't want him to do that to you." Elena asks, "Who?" She thinks for a minute, then she realizes something. She sits up and asks, "Homelander? You think Homelander did that?" Maeve shakily says, "The things I've watched him do, the things that he made me do. If he ever finds out about you," she takes a deep breath. Elena says, "Why are you telling me this now?" Maeve says, "I don't want you to hate me anymore."
Mm. Goodness.
I'm really happy to see her progressing in the right direction.
Yes.
She's finally able to come forward and, kind of set this right, because it's been weighing on her heavily, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a horrifying story.
Yeah. I mean, she obviously loves her, but she can't be with her because she's scared of what could happen to
Yeah.
her. She's basically being held hostage. Yeah.
Yes, and we asked this question in one of our episodes in season one about this. Why was Maeve this way with her? Was it maybe to protect her? And
Mm-hmm.
it appears that is exactly what she's been trying to do. That's what's going on in her mind. Is anytime she thinks of Elena, who she's obviously in love with, she sees this guy's torso in one room and his head in another room in a burnt up building.
Yeah.
And she can see Homelander just smiling doing it too.
Yeah. And at the race of the century, he told her, "If I ever thought that you were with anybody else,
Oh yes,
I don't know what I'd do." Yeah.
Don't know what I would do.
Yet he can run around, do whatever he wants.
Mm-hmm. Which we'll get into. Well, yeah, we'll get into some of that weirdness. This is an uncomfortable season.
Ryan is opening a box that Homelander has given him. It's a cell phone. He thinks it's cool and thanks Homelander. He's got some good manners, this boy.
Right?
Yep.
It's nice. It's pleasant to see.
Homelander chuckles and says, "You're welcome. It's crazy you don't have one already, actually." Ryan says he doesn't really have anybody to call. Homelander tells Ryan, "You could call me." Have we ever seen Homelander use a phone?
Speaking of pockets, have you ever seen guys with pockets on their uniforms either? I don't think they do.
Well,
probably spoils their lines as well, especially Homelander.
Black Noir, I think he's definitely has some knife holding capacity.
Black Noir can carry whatever he wants, and I will never say one word to what that fella's carrying. I don't think anyone else will too that lives to talk about him. It's like, you carry what you want, sir.
Yeah. Yeah.
But does Homelander have friends to even talk to? I know he's got people he talks down to, but I don't know if he has. Maeve is about the closest thing to a friend he's got, I think. Stillwell, but Stillwell wasn't a friend.
I'm thinking. Yeah, he doesn't really have anybody that yeah.
Yeah, that would be a weakness.
Mm-hmm. Homelander says, "Ryan, when I was your age, I didn't have many friends either." Ryan says, "Mom says being lonely makes you know yourself better." Homelander tells him, "Well, that's not wrong, I suppose. Can I tell you a secret? Man to man, Ryan nods and Homelander sits down on the bed next to him. Homelander chuckles, then says, "My dad and I, we never played catch in the yard with a World Series ball. Truth is, I never had a dad or a mom." This answers that question from earlier when he said,
Yes.
Yeah, he was playing catch with his dad.
Yeah.
Ryan thinks for a moment, scrunching his nose, then says, "Wait, you didn't?" Homelander shakes his head and says, "See, sometimes it's hard, Ryan, being superior to every single other person on the planet. It's isolating. And gods, should not have to feel that kind of, pain, because that is what we are, Ryan. You and me, we're gods. Son, we can do anything we want, and no one can stop us. Now that's a good feeling, a really good feeling. And now you and me can share it together. He picks up the phone and hands it to him. That's an interesting viewpoint. I guess Homelander never read any Greek mythology.
Right.
How many of Zeus and Hera's children rebelled against them? They got up to all kinds of shenanigans.
Oh, yeah. And think about the Greek gods themselves. They killed all their parents, the Titans.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
So it's like the Greek gods are just disgustingly empowered versions of ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. What makes him think that his son is going to want to have anything to do with him?
It's a good question. I don't know. Especially for, like I said, it's just, you can tell that Homelander's trying, but can you have young kids. I've had stepchildren, but not at this age where you're developing trust and they trust everything that comes out of people's mouths until proved otherwise. And to have this man lie to you and then turned around and tell you that he was lying to you. And then this other weird, like we're gods, we're this, that. I mean, this little kid's like, what are you, can you imagine what that's doing to this kid's head?
Yeah. I mean, he looks confused right here.
Yeah, he does.
And maybe a little bit overwhelmed. He shakes his head.
Yeah.
He says, I should probably go to bed now. I mean, like, he doesn't even
Yeah,
process
right.
it,
Smart.
This Homelander character, he knows who he is.
Yes.
I don't know if he looks at him as a hero. I guess he does. Shows up, says he's his dad. He's known him a couple days, maybe.
Right.
And now it's got to be overwhelming, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah. It's got to be tough.
Yeah.
Really tough.
Homelander says, sure. He pats Ryan on the leg, gets up, and turns out the light. He stands in the door and tells him, I love you, son. Ryan doesn't say anything. Homelander has to tell him, you can say it back. Ryan says, I love you too. Homelander smiles and nods, saying, this is nice. He closes the door. Becca is waiting outside in the hallway. Homelander tells her, your turn, Mom. She tells him he needs to leave. He turns to her and says, excuse me? She says, you need to get the out of my house. Homelander doesn't say anything for a moment, then says, what happens one day when Ryan asks to go to a baseball game, swim in the ocean, or eat at a Burger King? How do you think he's going to feel when he finds out that you've lied to him his whole life? You think he's going to be happy that you kept him in this pretty prison? Or do you think he'll despise you? Let's go ask him. I probably would have taken the direction of what happens when he has a tantrum and you can't do anything about it, or that he could accidentally kill you with his powers. That might have been a better way to go about convincing her.
Oh, I believe that would have been a better line of reasoning for him to have used on her.
Right.
But this idea that he seems to think, he's looking to try and be one big happy family with them. And sorry, Starlight's mother, but it's he wants to be a mom and dad, and this young man to be his son.
You think he wants to have her in the picture as a mom, or like as his wife?
That I don't know. He's very possessive.
Right.
He wants to possess her. I don't know if I don't know what that entails.
Okay. Yeah.
I have no idea what that means entirely.
Right.
But it means that he wants. There's something there. She is his as well in some twisted place in his mind.
Okay. Homelander takes a step towards the bedroom door. Becca moves to block him and says, don't. Homelander says, you are right. I'm not going to get bored and move on. I'm not going anywhere. So feel free to tell Dr. Park to go himself. He turns to leave, then asks her, how about some Jiffy Pop? That's got to be a tough situation to be in. Her home, sanctuary is being invaded with no support from anybody. Nobody can help her.
Yeah, and like I say, trapped there with her attacker, as far as we're aware, and a person that, the reason why she is here to begin with.
Yeah.
That's got to be real scary. I agree.
The boys are arming themselves, about to go to the address Butcher got from Mallory. Frenchie hands Butcher 2 rounds of halothane shot, saying those are the only 2 he has. I had to look this stuff up. Halothane is a general inhalation anesthetic used for induction and maintenance of general anesthesia. It reduces the blood pressure and frequently decreases the pulse rate and depresses respiration. It induces muscle relaxation and reduces pain's sensitivity by altering tissue excitability.
Why is it when you talk about things like this, I think of such dark things? Um, I'm talking about it's like I was reading this old comic book from Dark Horse a long, long time ago, and this, we were talking previously about the waterboarding issue and the idea of like motivating individuals to talk to us. In this book, they use this guy. They've got him dosed up with some spinal block, and they start removing pieces of him. But after they do it, they show him what they've started to do, and he can't feel it.
Right.
And then they kind of let him feel some of the pain, and then they get this guy to start spilling the beans, and then, but of course, it just kind of ends. But that, and that actually troubled me deeply. That thought. But when you mention anesthetic, I'm like, ugh. Yeah, my mind goes to dark places. Sorry, folks.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of that Gerard Butler movie, Law Abiding Citizen.
I just watched that the other day, and because I had not watched that in a long time. And I was like, wow, that's a tough movie. Yeah.
How did that make you feel?
Well, I mean, it's like I love Gerard Butler.
No, I mean the concept.
Oh, I loved it.
What happened to him and what he did.
I loved it, and I hated it at the same time. But parts of me loved it. But he got what was coming to him at the very end, though.
I mean, at that point, I think he accomplished what he wanted to.
But he had accomplished, I think all of his goals have been accomplished. But yeah, it's like, it's, yeah, it's a great, I love that movie. It's a really good movie. You're rooting for this guy. He's been so woefully done so wrong. And the only way to end, he's just so committed to vengeance. He makes Billy Butcher seem undetermined. Not even determined.
Yeah.
Speaking of vengeance, it's like this guy makes Butcher look like an amateur. We're looking for vengeance.
Yeah. A singular focus. Like his whole existence went towards that. That movie leaves me feeling really conflicted.
Yeah. Yes, it does.
Because you put yourself as a father that happens to your family.
Oh my goodness.
And then having to go through that, and then the system fails you.
Yes.
And then what do you do?
It fails you and victimizes you. Yeah. It's like, wow. Yeah. I kind of, I'm like you, I do have a kind of a torn feeling on that one, but man, that's good.
Yeah. Cause this is that same concept that I was having trouble reconciling, where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
Right. And
yeah, very much.
It's still one of those questions of like, what is that line?
I
don't
agree.
know. I really don't know.
I don't either. Better minds than me have talked about it for millennia, and still there's no answer. So
right. These halothane shots, they have 2 of them. Butcher says they better make them count. Kamiko, she's looking pretty concerned at this point.
Yes.
Frenchie asks, what if the halothane doesn't work on the suit? Butcher tells him, then we're right and well. I like the way he says that. That's a good way to say it.
Yes, that is a great way to say it.
Butcher closes the back doors to the van. He finds Huey sulking there. They're about to breach the building. Frenchie is picking the lock. Kamiko is looking more skittish by the moment. Frenchie notices and asks her if she's okay. She nods but edges closer to the door, like she really wants to get in first. Frenchie opens the door, then Butcher enters. Kamiko follows soon after. They are in something like a party city. There are soup costumes everywhere. The shop has some off-brand replacements for Vought heroes. There are also some other ones that might be legitimate. Here are a couple of them. Starshot, Home Defender, which is a dog-based Homelander outfit.
A nod to Crypto, the Superman's dog.
Okay. I did not know about that dog. All right.
Yeah, you don't need to.
Deep Down, which is a female deep costume. Starlight, which is strange because the others are knockoffs. This is also just a deluxe wig and not the whole outfit.
Well, her outfit doesn't consist of much, so...
True. Yeah. The boys spread out to cover more area. Kamiko finds a man in a back office. He's looking at some pictures. There are some explosives and a gun on the table. Kamiko sneaks up on him and literally twists his head off.
Oh, that is so,
It's gruesome.
so, oh, it's rough.
It's
I mean, it literally, you're right. She bends it backwards off. It's like, ow.
yeah,
It's
it
like,
was very reminiscent of the Black Noir unzipping the man's
opening,
head as you described it. Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Frenchie walks in. His eyes are huge. He inspects the body and sees the man is wearing a shirt for the Shining Light Liberation Army. He asks Kamiko if these are the ones that kidnapped her. She nods. He asks if she knows this man. She nods again. Frenchie turns back to the man, asking what's going on. He's confused. He turns back around and Kamiko's gone. She climbs on top of some shelving and starts to look around. She sees a man snooping around. She jumps down in front of him and lands in a crouched position. She slowly stands up and then jumps towards the man and hugs him. She starts to use sign language to speak with him. She signs, "Mouse, I thought I'd never see you again."
I had read that their sign language is not real sign language. It's a sign language that was developed especially for this show.
Yeah, I think it's their personal communication between the two of them that they developed as children.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. That's the way I read it too.
Yeah. Because the one that I saw that kind of gave it away was when she says something about her spine later. They inject her in the spine and she kind of stacks up the vertebrae with her hands. Like I was like, there's no way that's a real sign language thing. But yeah, it definitely doesn't look like standard sign language. They're both smiling. Frenchie puts together that what she was trying to communicate to him with boy girl in her book, it's her brother. Right. Huey leaves Frenchie's side to go find Butcher. He finds him and tells him to wait. It's Kamiko's brother. Butcher ignores him, moving in for the takedown. He takes aim and starts to pull the trigger. Huey launches himself at Butcher from the side, hitting him and causing him to miss his shot. Kamiko's brother sees the glass of a display case shatter from the round. He launches the boys back, knocking them into some shelving, causing it to collapse. Then, to add insult to injury, he launches more shelving at them, covering them. Finally, he pulls down the scaffolding hanging from the ceiling onto them. Kamiko grabs her brother and they both run. Frenchie jumps out of the pile and calls after her. He runs out of the store, but she's gone.
And he is strong. Remember in that first episode, that boat was washed up on shore because he just picked it up and threw a boat at somebody. I mean, and not like a personal boat, like what did you say, like a fishing boat?
Yeah, it was a fishing boat. I would say it was at least 70 feet long.
Yeah, it's a pretty big boat. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not some little bitty thing. Yeah. So he's man, the guy's real, his power is real strong.
I got a thing for Magneto, but this seems to be telekinesis, not magnetism, because he is like later he picks Kamiko up.
Yeah.
With it, so yeah, this is more of a telekinesis. Who has telekinetic powers?
Oh, you mean like in any particular universes? We talked about the one that comes readily is Miss Invisible Girl. She is a walking encyclopedia of telekinetic powers.
All right.
But Magneto could grab people too, but they always, I don't know. I don't think it's physically possible, but they say he grabbed the iron in your blood. So, I mean, maybe he could grab people like that too. I don't know.
Starlight is in the Vought Tower. We can see that Stormfront is rummaging around in her purse/backpack thing. The Gal Gear case is still sticking out the side pocket. Starlight walks up to her and says, "Hey, you don't know me. I'm not a sellout." Stormfront says, "Oh, okay, cool. Congratulations." She gives Starlight 2 thumbs up and chuckles, then turns to walk away. She sees that Starlight isn't laughing and says, "Oh, come on. Why do you care what I think?" Starlight says, "Maybe I want to say everything that you're saying about Vought. Maybe I think Vought's..." She pauses. Stormfront says, "What? What's Vought?" Starlight just shakes her head. Stormfront tells her, "Oh my God, everyone is so stage managed. Life isn't actually a PR strategy. You can say what you think." Starlight asks her, "What if it's not safe?" And given what Homelander did to her last season, I don't blame her for thinking that at all.
Right.
Stormfront loudly states, "You are literally bulletproof. What the is going to happen?" Okay, who's the greatest superhero of all time? Starlight guesses Homelander. Stormfront says, "No, Pippi Longstocking." Starlight doesn't get it. Stormfront explains Pippi Longstocking. She's a 9-year-old girl, lived in a house all by herself, pet monkey, could lift a horse with one hand. You haven't read Pippi Longstocking? Starlight says, I guess not. Stormfront says, okay, well, I used to dress as her every Halloween, and all the girls dressed like Disney sluts would make fun of me. You know what I thought? I thought, who cares? Pippi didn't care. She never cared about being polite or cute. She looks Starlight up and down when she says this, then continues, look, this world for confusing nice with good. Be a bitch if you want. Be whatever. Just drop the mask once in a while. Feels good. You can finally breathe.
I like the way Stormfront talks too. Another thing I like that that's kind of implied with her statement is like people will mistake kindness for weakness. Despite how Stormfront talks, I don't trust her.
Yep. Stormfront turns to walk away. Starlight takes this as an opportunity to swipe the Gal Gear case from her bag. Stormfront turns around and says, oh, and if someone sticks a in your mouth, bite it off. Pippi Longstocking would bite a D. That's for damn sure. She leaves. Starlight puts the Gal Gear case in her boot.
Can we just say how nicely done Starlight with all the misdirection and the taking the bag and putting it someplace else and all this other stuff? With I'm impressed with Starlight here, getting it back with no one seeing it. That's great, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. The first time I watched this, I didn't see her sleight of hand, and I was super confused about where she put it because I saw her put it in her boot.
Right. I did too.
And then upon rewatching it, as I was taking my notes, I was like, oh, when she goes and stands next to the backpack, she puts it in. Really good job.
Yeah.
Really good job.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with her.
And then recovering it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm impressed with her. Good job. Good job, Andy.
Frenchie is uncovering debris from Butcher and shouting his name. MM is helping him, and they get Butcher out. Butcher runs toward the front of the store looking for Kamiko's brother. When he realizes they're gone, he does a slow turn and locks onto Huey.
Yes, he does.
MM sees Butcher making a move towards Huey and tries to calm him down. Huey tells Butcher the CIA would have locked him up in some black box forever, and she never would have seen her brother again. Butcher is in a rage. He's still trying to get at Huey. MM asks them both to stop. Butcher nods and says, right. He wipes blood off his lip and walks up to Huey. The two square off. Butcher points a finger at Huey's chest and says, you. Off. He turns to leave and says, the rest of you with me.
Goodness.
MM and Frenchie don't move at all.
I love it.
Dude.
I love that.
Yeah, this scene right here, man.
Yeah.
Butcher digs around in the debris and he gets his gun out. He calls back to Frenchie and MM saying, oh, come on, don't piss about. Yeah, we ain't got all night. They still don't move.
And let's just real quickly say, this says an awful lot about Huey, because this is what it's about. It looks like Huey or Butcher.
Do you think it's either or can they be together?
They could be together, but Butcher is proving to be, I think the fact that they're seeing that, I think with Huey around, they're kind of seeing Butcher as being kind of a piece of crap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I mean, they've known this. It's different being with one and not having someone constantly point out how much he's a piece of crap and why he is. And that's what Huey's doing.
Right.
Whether he's doing it intentionally or just expressing his frustration, either one, it's, I think they're kind of starting to see that just Butcher is not a good person to be affiliated with. And I think that they see some of, because Huey's too good. Butcher is too rough. We need to, we have to have some kind of compromise. We need MM, I think we need MM as the lead personally. I think you and I both would be happy with MM as the leader.
Well, heck yeah, man. This show would have been done in season 1. They would have got that knocked out.
Homelander would have been, it'd have been done. It'd have been over and done with, I think.
Yeah.
I'm expressing a little bias toward the man, but
we got that OCD companionship.
Oh, absolutely. Everything about Mother's Milk. I just love that guy. Let's just say everything. He's so cool. Even under, even when he is so angry, he's just shaking. He still keeps it together.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the crap out of that.
Yeah. In episode 1 of season 2, him and Huey were getting into it a little bit, but he comes around. He says, "No, I don't want to beat you up."
Yeah.
Huey's looking confused at the fact that Frenchie and MM aren't moving.
Yeah.
And Butcher sees that they still haven't moved. And he says, "What are you waiting for?" No one responds. They're all just looking at Butcher. Butcher starts walking towards them saying, "Are you telling me that her family is worth more to you than you seeing your own?" MM says, "No, I'm not. But Kamiko is one of us. I'll find another way." He turns around. I didn't notice this the first time I was watching it. Frenchie has a grin from ear to ear when he hears MM say this.
I did not notice it. I will go back
Yes.
and watch that when we get done. When we get done tonight, I'll do that.
Yeah. Huge grin on his face. Butcher addresses Frenchie saying, "I suppose you agree, don't you? Since your tongue is halfway up her ass." Frenchie nods. Butcher says, "It's just like Huey's infected you both with a raging case of He turns around and is thinking for a moment. He thinks for a while. While his back is still turned, he says, "Becca's alive." Huey says, "What?" He's really surprised. Butcher says, "She's alive. Vought's holding her captive somewhere." MM starts shaking his head and smiling. He's saying, "Butcher, if you..." Butcher says, "No, I'm not stark raving, all right? I saw her. She had a little boy with her, the spitting image of Homelander. I thought he just wanted to humiliate me, show me what he'd done to my girl before he gave me the good news. Then I woke up 3 hours later in a Tony Cicero's. God knows why. I got to find her, and I got to get her the out of there. And I need your help to do it." MM points at him and says, "Are you with us?"
Right?
Butcher says, "I find the terrorist for Mallory. She finds Becca for me. That's the deal I made. I know what I done to you, all right? And by rights, you should tell me to off. But still, I'm asking." The boys are mulling it over, and Mem's looking at Frenchie. There's a lot of character development in this scene, you know?
Yes, there is. There's a
First,
lot.
Frenchie and MM standing up to Butcher. When he tries to drop Huey, they fully adopted him now.
Yes, I love that. Love it.
Yeah, MM saying Kamiko's one of them, and by extension, her family's important.
And I really love that. I mean, it's because I too have liked Kamiko since we found her, and I like her as part of the gang, and I like seeing her come out of her shell and learning, as we learn more about her.
Yeah, and then the third is this step for Butcher when he comes clean with them. That's gotta be his final card that he's playing, right?
It is, and we know, of course, we as an audience know this, but what do you think? Do you think the guys believe him? I mean, because even MM kind of gives him the what? Almost like, is this another tactic? Is this,
I am inclined to say they believe him because look at how he's acting.
Yeah, that's true.
He normally has the eating grin on his face. He's kind of cocky. He's vulnerable here.
He is vulnerable. That's true. He's showing a lot. I agree. I just think he's showing some vulnerability, but he's done this in the past and he's been full of it. I think
he's done the vulnerability thing.
I think he's done some vulnerability when it's suited him.
Okay.
No, I'll have to think back specifically. The only thing I can think of that comes to mind is the first encounter with Mallory at her place. He pulls some vulnerability to get her to, that's what vulnerability is, the price of information.
In that case, I think because she made promises to him and she got him on this path, I think that was true vulnerability. I don't think he was doing it to use her. I think he really felt that way.
That could be. And again, a lot of this is, and I feel, and speaking of misdirection from Starlight, I think some of this is also going to be misdirection on character on Butcher as well. As I think they deliberately want us to dislike him, and I fully don't like him right now. But I think things change. I'm pretty sure by the end of the season. But there's always, this show functions on a couple of levels a lot of times, and I think that there's a lot of that going on with him on that.
Yeah, I think the journey we're seeing this season is Huey and Butcher have to get this worked out.
Yes.
They have to come to some type of compromise between them. Somebody's going to have to change.
Absolutely.
So we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, I'm eagerly looking forward to where that goes.
Kamiko and her brother are in a park. They're sitting on some swings. He apologizes to her for the night she was taken. He says they were supposed to look out for each other. She shakes her head, signing that the Shining Light Liberation Army took her here and injected blue poison into her spine. He says, I should have found you. She signs she is the older sister. She should have come back for him. She starts crying and signs that they made her into a monster. He laughs and tells her, if that's true, we're both monsters now. She smiles, then asks him if it hurt. He tells her, I wanted to die. She indicates it was the same for her. He says they had one dose left and they knew it worked on you, so they figured it would work on me. She apologizes. He tells her it's not her fault. She tries to insist. He starts crying and again tells her it's not her fault, and they hug. Starlight enters her apartment in the Vought Tower. She pulls out the burner phone from its hiding spot and texts Huey, asking where he is and telling him she got the compound V and she's freaking out. She tells him to call her. A-Train appears with a boom and asks, who we sexting? She says, what are you doing here? Get out. He speeds over and grabs the Gal Gear case from her boot before she can react. She tells him, oh, okay, you got me. I'm having a heavy flow day. He unzips the pouch and pulls out the vial of Compound V. He says, what are you doing with this? And he's got that same crazy boyfriend vibe going on right now, you know?
Yes, very, very unhinged.
Yeah. She defensively says, this is not how it looks, okay? It's just a misunderstanding. A-Train points a finger at her and says, Homelander should have charred your as soon as he found out that you were Huey. Starlight says, Huey saved your life. We both did. A-Train says, your mistake. He begins to walk out of the room. What a bag.
Yeah, he's awful.
Starlight tells him, okay, if you just give me a minute, I can explain. He says, you know, I just want you to think about me when you're getting the skin peeled off your face. This is particularly gruesome. Do you think this has happened to someone before? Is that like a Black Noir move?
I don't know. It is an awful image, and I Black Noir, I could absolutely see him doing something like that. Could it be Homelander doing something like that?
From what we've seen, he just does the heat vision stuff.
Yeah, he just we've never even seen him like punch it. He did throw the one guy, but that was he barely moved him. I mean, to throw that guy that far. But yeah, it's got to be Black Noir. He's the only guy with the knife, and he could probably peel you. He could probably fillet you pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Starlight tries a different approach. She says, you're not going to tell anyone anything. He asks her, who says that I haven't already? She tells him, because then I'd already be dead. You're not going to do
I love that. I love her standing up. It's like she's kind of realizing she's got some power here. She's testing it out.
We'll see how it plays out.
Right?
He says, why is that? She goes for a low blow, saying, because you killed your girlfriend.
Oof.
That's what you told Huey, right? That you killed Popclaw? He tells her, you can't prove anything. Starlight asks, did she suffer? Did you look into her big, sad eyes while you did it? He shakes his head and says, you. She continues, yeah, see, I looked at the Vought forensics report and wow, all those needles jammed into her arm at the same time. I mean, one of them actually shattered the bone. Did you know that? Was someone really do that to themselves? I mean, doesn't look like an accident to me. I mean, Vaught's happy to bury it, but, say if Sports Illustrated found out. He says, if you do that, I'm going to take you down right with me, and then we'll both be dead. She scoffs and says, go ahead, try it. I don't give a. She reaches out and plucks the vial of Compound V from his hand. He turns and leaves. As he's leaving, is it me or does he kind of give her a look as if to say, well played? Like he's got some kind of look on his face.
Well, there's something there, but I'm not sure if it's a well played or an, oh man, or oh crap, man, that kind of thing. She definitely owned him there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not sure it's something but I think it's a respect either way. It's like, oh wow, like I didn't see her that way.
Whether it's true respect or grudging respect.
Right.
Yeah.
It's respect either way.
Yeah. And this way that Starlight's acting, do you think this is her getting tired of being worried all the time? Or is it something related to Stormfront's influence, like that talk that she gave her?
I'm pretty sure she's sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Uh-huh.
And but Stormfront could have that positive effect on her, because the she appears to be speaking her mind. She's talking about the Pippi Pippi Longstocking reference is pretty strange. I
Mm-hmm.
actually know who Pippi Longstocking is. Strangely enough, I never liked it or read it, but I know who she is, and but it's just an odd. She has a very positive seeming impact. So I think it's a little combination of both. I'm tired. I'm so sick and tired of this. I'm going to start doing. I'm going to do my thing. Forget you guys.
Mm-hmm. Kimiko's walking down the street with her brother. He's asking her about the people she was with, Butcher and the boys. She signs that they keep her safe and that they'll keep him safe too. She goes on to sign, or we can go back to the village. He says there's no village anymore. She signs for more detail. He says they came for us. She wants to know who. He tells her the Americans. This hero came shrieking out of the sky like a demon, destroyed the camp, and all the villages around it too. There were bodies everywhere. Everyone's gone. Does that sound like Homelander to you?
I think it does. He's
Mm-hmm.
the only one that fits that profile, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
She signs, then we'll go somewhere else, back to Japan. Maybe grandma and grandpa are still alive. He gets upset, saying, You don't care that the superhero split an old woman in half, that the entire school caved in with the kids inside, that babies burned alive in their cribs when the propane tanks exploded? I never wanted any of this, but they were right all along.
Okay, so probably Homelander.
Yeah, the splitting the grandma, yeah.
Yeah.
She aggressively signs, Shining Light Liberation Army is full of. He fires back, Shining Light fights injustice. They stand up for people without a voice. She signs that they murdered their parents. He tells her, This country is an enemy to the whole world now. We need to fight back. Fight with me. Do you think Shining Light could have won him over and brainwashed him if Vought didn't get soups in the military? Or is this merely a symptom of the collateral damage caused by the soups being in the military?
I have no idea how to answer that, Comron.
Okay.
It's a really good question. I think I tend to lean toward it's more of a symptom of collateral damage caused by the soups in the military because a superpower or groups that are trying to make a name for himself, you know, in the past we've always, they're always looking for a smaller and deadlier means of fighting. And if you got and if the technology and the weapons are soups, then I think it makes getting a soup more affordable. And but you're going to cause we're going to cause an escalation like we had with the Cold War and the military escalation with the nukes. You'll just have smaller and smaller countries will start having them though, as opposed to like 2 or 3 people having it. You'll have hundreds of nations with hundreds of soups.
The statement that kind of caught me here, he says, This country is an enemy to the whole world now.
Right.
Now, Kimiko describes her brother as the boy. Well, she's about to say this the next line. She says, You're the boy who nursed every mouse who lost its mother. So he was a sweet boy, sweet kid.
Yes.
And given that the Shining Light Liberation Army murdered their parents, he probably could not have been that easily brainwashed into joining their ranks.
Well, there's, I would think that, but the fact, and also the fact that they're somehow responsible for, I don't know, his sister's disappearance. We don't know, but obviously he is aware that that they were successful in making her a soup. Hence them trying it on him. He's aware of this. And so maybe all this, along with the pain he suffered, because we don't, true pain can really mess you up, especially the older you are versus, sometimes when you're younger, you can get past certain things easier. But maybe that along, maybe they were trying to brainwash him at the same time he's going through this treatments of the compound V, and they were able to kind of just, I don't know. I really don't know.
I have to think, because Kimiko even though they put her through that same stuff, she still was resistant to them. And she went
Yes.
against her captors instead of wanting to attack the country.
But she was that away. But if the shining light had kept her longer, would they have been able to change her? Because she's pretty feral. When the boys get her, it's only by the boys, by Frenchie in particular, being kind, and Huey also being a kind guy, and her being around them. She's lucky in where she landed.
Mm.
So this brings out a different side of hers. There was probably a time when she could have been turned the same way.
Okay.
What do you think? Do you think so? What do you?
Environment definitely plays a role.
Well,
I mean, having your parents murdered that's a pretty big thing. She's not willing to give it up.
I wouldn't want to give that up either for these guys who did it and then try and help them. I might be willing to go ahead and try and take the power and come over here and do my own thing.
Yeah. I would have to think that if Kamiko was in the village when the brother was there, and if she witnessed what he saw with what Homelander did to that place, if he was actually there, then she might also fall in a similar boat.
That's true. Seeing that stuff, and seeing the callous nature of it, it's one thing to have people killed in an action versus, guy flying in the middle of the night, cutting a bunch of people down with heat. What I'm assuming are heat vision and super strength or whatever he does.
Mm-hmm. Her brother tells her that was a long time ago after she talked about him nursing the mice back to health.
Right.
She signs, "You're still my brother." He says, "Then I have to do this." He turns to leave. She grabs his wrist, and you can hear his bones creaking under the strain. She's squeezing hard. He blasts her with some telekinesis, knocking her into the side of a car, and denting the door, shattering the window. She gets up and chases after him. She's catching up to him, and she leaps into the air. He turns around and suspends her midair with his powers. He holds her there for a while, and then he launches her into the 4th story of a brick building. It spectacularly blasts a hole in the wall. I mean, the noise it makes and the way it crumbles, it was sick looking.
Yeah, it's amazing looking.
It's a hard hit. He runs again. He's running for a while, then he stops because he senses something, and then she jumps down from above and knocks him down. She manages to wrestle him to the ground, and then she gets him in a headlock and knocks him out. The boys pull up in their van. Butcher has his gun trained on them. Frenchie asks if she's all right. Butcher raises his weapon, saying, "Well, cheers, love. At least someone's got some sense around here." She glares at him, and it wipes the smile off his face. They load Kamiko's brother into the back. They have his hands duct taped together to subdue him.
Nice.
Huey closes the van doors. Butcher is standing there waiting for him. Butcher stares at him for a second, then he clocks him hard, knocking him to the ground. Huey spits out blood. Butcher says, "You come between me and my missus again, I'll kill you." He walks off and gets in the van.
Again, I'm going to say I really do not like him so far this season. I understand where he's coming from. I mean, I do.
Yeah, I think he's even more driven now, given he's seen Becca's alive and she's being held captive.
He is. But again, it's like it's just because I like Huey so much. I just hate seeing him get treated this way. But as part of it, that's really what it is.
Yeah,
it's kind of like kicking a cat or kicking a dog.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Huey slowly stands up. Calls to Huey, asking him if he's coming. He waits for Huey to get in the van before he drives off. "Psycho Killer" by Talking Heads starts playing.
I love that song. If you ever get a chance to watch if you like horror comedy, it's kind of almost like a mockumentary at first, and it's called Beneath the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon, and it's the premise is in a world where Freddy and Jason and masked killers exist. Mm-hmm. This guy's training to be like the next big thing. And so he trains, and then about halfway through the movie, it shifts from being a documentary or a mockumentary into being like a legitimate horror movie that's still kind of funny, though. It's really good.
Interesting.
But really good episode, dude.
Yeah. What was some standout stuff for you from this episode?
I love the deep and the shrooms and the body
Oh man.
acceptance.
Oh
That's
man.
some really uncomfortable, but really funny. It's at least more comfortable. It's not as uncomfortable as the shaving himself naked. You know, we're had to fast forward through that, but it's just so funny. And sometimes I don't like Patton Oswalt a lot personally, but sometimes he's really funny in my ward. He's the Gills. He's amazing as the Gills. It's really funny. And I also just, and being a fan of just pretty mean stuff, I'm loving Kamiko. It just pops that guy's head off, man.
That was crazy.
That's crazy. And her being thrown, man, that shot of her being thrown into that building is, man, that is amazing looking.
Yeah.
I mean, that does some serious damage. I mean, that's like a bomb going. He throws her so hard, it's like a bomb going off or something in that building.
When he brought all that debris down on them in the party store, that was pretty epic too. Because first he throws them, then he buries them, then he buries them again with that scaffolding stuff. I mean, he's just throwing tons of stuff at him. That was pretty crazy.
That is great. That is great.
I really liked Stormfront popping off to the press, and then
I do too. I like her making fun of the doll of the action figure.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Don't waste your money on this hunk of junk with the the well endowed comment. I love that. That's really funny, man. That's really funny.
It was good to see Maeve coming clean.
Yeah,
definitely. Cool. Any final thoughts?
Really a lot going on. A lot of moving pieces. Really good.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at HorseFrogProductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.